Okay, I have some exciting news. My mother dropped off her gavel from when she was chair of the Brunswick Town Council. So good morning. Welcome to the Joint Standing Committee on Education and Cultural Affairs. We have an exciting morning of orientations today. We'll be hearing from the Maine Charter School Commission, the Maine Association of Independent Schools, the Ocean School, Educate Maine, Maine Development Foundation, and Maine Association for the Education of Young Children, as well as doing language review on our report back of the supplemental budget work session that we had on Wednesday. And before we jump in with introductions, I still have a poem, but because we're running late, today is a limerick. I'm going to make Representative Stearns happy. And also, if anyone ever has a poem to share, let me know. I'd be happy to have you read it. But today is by, I'm going to totally massacre his name, Dixon Lanier Merritt. And the limerick goes as following. A wonderful bird is the pelican. His beak can hold more than his belly can. He can hold in his beak enough food for a week, though I'm damned if I know how the hell it can. So with that, we'll jump right into introductions. I am Senator Maddie Daughtry. I represent Senate District 24, which is Brunswick, Harpswell, North Yarmouth, Freeport, and Pownell. And I'd like to introduce my co-chair, my House Chair, Representative Brennan.
Hi, Michael Brennan. I represent District 36, which is part of Portland.
And then Senator Rafferty, please.
Good morning. My name is Joe Rafferty, and I represent Senate District 34, including Acton, Lebanon, parts of Berwick, North Berwick, Wells, and Kennebunk.
Thank you. Senator Woodson.
Dave Woodson, District 33, York County.
Representative Crockett.
Good morning, everyone. Ed Crockett, District 43, which is part of Portland and part of Falmouth.
Representative Dodge.
Good morning, everyone. Representative Jan Dodge, House District 97, Belfast, Northport, and Waldo.
Representative Lyman.
Good morning, Representative Sheila Lyman, District 74, J, Livermore Falls, and part of Livermore.
Representative McCray.
Yes, good morning. I'm Dave McCray. I live in Fort Fairfield, in the center of my District 148, up in the county, and welcome. Thank you.
Representative Millett will be joining us later. Representative Roach.
Yes, Tim Roach, representing Wells, District 7.
Representative Salisbury will also be joining us a little bit later. And then Representative Sampson.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Heidi Sampson from House District 21. I represent the good people of Alfred, Limerick, Shapley, Newfield, and Portland.
And Representative Stearns.
Good morning. My name is Paul Stearns. I represent House District 119, which consists of a dozen towns in the unorganized territories of Piscataquis County.
Thank you, everybody. And we're going to start letting folks in from the waiting room.
Senator, you saw the email from the Maine Association of Education that they want to go at 11 o'clock.
Yeah, so Williams we're expecting from them, but I still think, Sam, if you could make me a co-host, because I can't see the waiting room, pretty please.
Sorry about that, Senator.
No worries. It has been a fun morning of technology. I was about to have to try to do this from my cell phone, and I was not looking forward to it. Up first, we do have the Maine Charter School Commission. I'm going to try to make sure we get everyone in. I see Ms. Farnham in the waiting room. There we go. Good morning, Ms. Farnham. Do we have everyone that we're expecting from the Charter Commission properly in the Zoom and out of the waiting room? Think so? Well, we're ready whenever you are.
She's still muted. She's still muted.
Mr. Jones, are you going to be kicking us off?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if that was my call to go or if I was waiting for something else. I appreciate it, Senator Daughtry. Thank you. Senator Daughtry, Representative Brennan, distinguished members of the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee. I come here today with enthusiasm and gratitude for your time. Thank you for the opportunity opportunity to share the work of the commission during these incredibly trying times for our schools. I want to extend some thanks to the legislative staff as well, including Sam Baker and Mary Becker, who worked so hard to organize these meetings. Thank you so much. Quick shout out to my team at the commission who work with clear eyes and full hearts to ensure that we have great opportunities for students that attend Maine's charter schools. So thank you, Gina, Amy, and Jasmine. And thank you to all of our commission members who devote their time making Maine a better place for children. So thank you for your service to the commission. Finally, I don't want to miss the opportunity to say congratulations, Senator Daughtry, on your recent appointment to as the Assistant Majority Leader. Look forward to your leadership and appreciate your service to the state. I was told that I have 15 minutes this morning. I'm going to be brief, so I'm setting a timer for 13. I'm going to spend a few minutes just introducing myself, provide you with an update on the work at the Maine Charter School Commission, and leave some time at the end to answer any questions or take any of your thoughts that you'd like to share with me. I sent over a one-pager to the committee, front back, that summarizes the work of the commission. So I hope you were able to get a copy of that. My name's Jeremy Jones, and for the last 17 years, I've been working on behalf of students and families across the country, in particular in the charter school movement. I'm a former school leader myself. I was a principal in Houston for a while. I also helped to launch the Achievement School District in Tennessee, which was a charter authorizer and operator, and have spent my most recent work working in the state of Texas to advance partnerships between traditional schools and charter schools in the state. Moving to Maine just next month, and so I'm excited to be a part of the work in the state. And if you have any great real estate agents, please connect me with them, because we're going to set down some roots in Maine, and we're really excited to do that. To bring everyone up to just a common baseline on Maine's charter schools, I provided some brief facts in our one-pager, but I just want to quickly review those so that we have a common understanding. LD 1553 was passed in 2011, allowing for the creation of a commission that would authorize and monitor new schools in the state. And these schools are known as public charter schools. Currently, the Charter Commission operates under some restrictions. The number of schools that can operate in the state at any given time is 10, and the two virtual charter schools are only allowed to serve 1,000 students total between the two of them. Public charter schools in Maine range in educational emphasis and opportunity. They also range in delivery style of teaching and learning. These public schools are serving a wide variety of needs and interests. We have a school that focuses on an arts program. We have environmental studies school. We have STEM programs. So they really span the range of educational interest for students and families across the state. The 10 public charter schools in the state undergo intense scrutiny, and that is a responsibility that myself and my team and the commission members take very seriously. We're currently in our mid-year meeting process, in which my team meets with each school leader and their board chair to analyze performance and discuss ways to improve. Obviously, a large part of our recent discussions is about learning during the pandemic. I've included some quotes from leaders here on our one-pager from recent meetings, and our leaders are describing the situation as dire, rugged, and hopeful. Many are seizing opportunities to change the way that we do school forever. So this pandemic has certainly altered the way they will operate in the future. But they're also trying to figure out how to ensure that they can maintain a high bar for student learning while serving all of the needs that our students and families are bringing into school these days. And certainly some leaders are feeling overwhelmed, and some leaders are feeling very hopeful. And I imagine on any given day, they're feeling those two feelings multiple times. I'm really proud of the work of the charter schools, especially at the onset of the pandemic, where they rapidly pivoted over to support families in myriad ways. We had anytime, anywhere learning plans that provided for opportunities to continue learning immediately when schools were shut down, that then allowed us to maintain our momentum of learning from last spring into this current school year. Schools also ensured that families had the opportunity to continue accessing nutrition programs and school supplies and other resources that our students typically get at schools, but weren't able to get during the pandemic. Another thing that I'm really proud of among the charter schools is that our public charter schools in the state are building deep relationships with each other and their local traditional counterparts. So they're really capitalizing on opportunities to provide more and better services to the students and families that attend these schools. A recent example that comes to mind is that we had a student who really wanted to take the PSAT, but because she was attending one of Maine's virtual schools, was not able to take the PSAT because the College Board doesn't allow the virtual school to be a testing site. So we were able to connect with another charter school, and so she will be taking the March administration of the PSAT. So the opportunity for our 10 charter campuses to work together, I think, happens on a daily basis. We also have a charter school, Harpswell, who's working very closely with the local traditional districts to try to create a network of expeditionary learning schools in the region. And I think these examples are important because I think it bridges the divide between what we call public charter schools and what we call traditional schools. And it gives me hope for the future that we can all just make sure that we're working to create great schools regardless of what label we put on them. We are currently putting the final touches on an annual report to the Education Commissioner. We are statutorily required to provide this report, and we are going to fulfill this requirement by the end of next week. At the same time that report becomes available to the Commissioner, we will distribute it to this committee. This year's annual report will provide an in-depth summary of performance for the portfolio of schools for the 1920 school year. But it also will provide some recent updates in school performance as well. We thought that it would be good to provide you a summary of how things were last school, but also give you an update on how things are going this school year. So my hope in delivering that report to Commissioner Macon is to start developing a relationship with her as well. As some of you know, I'm new to this role, and so I'm looking forward to working closely with the Commissioner on making sure that the charter schools in the state are performing at optimal levels. So this year's annual report is our first attempt to formally communicate the performance of the portfolio to the Commissioner. I would also welcome any further discussion on the report's findings from this committee, should you have any questions, concerns, or ideas once you get that report next week. Because I'm new, I'm sort of in this honeymoon period where I'm really excited about the future. And so I've been spending a lot of time just learning about the historical context of Maine's public charter schools, while also trying to assess what are the opportunities for us in the future. And I'm proud to share with you today that I think that we're in a pretty good position to ensure that the public charter schools in the state are some of the highest performing schools, not only in Maine, but New England and potentially the country. And that's the goal that I'm setting out to achieve. I think right now there is a strong foundation for future success. It's apparent that the last decade of work has laid a foundation from which we can build world-class charter school ecosystems in the state that provide for nurturing learning environments and innovative approaches to teaching and learning and diverse options to our families. I think we're building a culture of continuous improvement right now that will drive greater student learning. admittedly, I think we need to continue to do better by our families. And so I'm excited by the work that the commission has done over these past years. And I think they've worked diligently to ensure that our schools are operating effectively. And I know that we can do better, and that will be my push with our team. Additionally, I'm excited to revitalize our mission, vision, and goals. Over the next few months, the Commission will engage in a rigorous investigation of our past work, a deep analysis of opportunities and assets that we have, and authentic conversations with our community about how the Commission adds value to not only our charter schools, but to be a leading advocate for school performance in the state. We've got an opportunity to really provide some additional clarity to stakeholders about who we are and what we do and how we intend to better serve public charter school students. I'm also really excited about the opportunity to bring the Maine Charter School Commission up to national standards. I've had the opportunity to work in a variety of settings, including Louisiana, Tennessee, and Texas, and have a national network of folks that I can tap into, including in Colorado and South Carolina, where charter school ecosystems really thrive. And so I'm hoping that we can move really quickly in the next 6 months to bring us up to national standards. Our team is very small and they are mighty, but we have been operating as a startup team for the past 8 years, and it's time to transition us away from startup operations to a more sustainable commission that's focused on excellence and continuous improvement. And finally, we're really going to strengthen the capacity of our governing boards, our school leaders, and our instructional staff. I think a primary role of the commission should be to adopt a mindset around how do we develop the talent, the human talent at our schools to be sustainably excellent organizations. So, I'm personally going to take responsibility to figure out how do we strengthen our governing board chairs so that they can better hold the officers of the school accountable for the performance that is outlined in the performance framework for the Charter Commission, as well as the covenants of the contract between the state of Maine and the public charter school operator. So that is a very brief summary and overview of our work at the Commission, and I would be happy to take any questions or comments that you have in the brief time remaining.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jones, and welcome. I'm really excited to be working with you and all of the Commission. And I know I really like what you said about it's no longer in startup mode, but we're looking at the next steps. I see a question from Representative Crockett.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Jones, first I want to welcome you to Maine. As a former Houstonian, I lived on Willcrest, just off of Westheimer.
Wow.
That means.
Yes, I do.
And I think you've made an incredibly wise choice coming to Maine, and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Representative Crockett. It's good to know that we have a Houston connection here. I'm excited to talk with you about that here in the future, and appreciate the kind wishes. I've been nothing but hopeful and full-hearted as people assure me that I've made the right decision. So no buyer's remorse from me.
That's good to hear. Next up, we have Senator Woodson, followed by Representative Dodge.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. You mentioned several states that charter schools are thriving. And what do you attribute that to? What are some of the factors that make charter schools successful in these other states?
I think that is a great and insightful question. And I think each state has created the conditions for success in a couple of different ways. I think there's a strong foundation of helpful and supportive policy, ranging from opportunities for schools to attain funding and opportunities for schools to grow and advance should they be successful. So I think that those sort of policy incentives exist. I also think that in many of those states that I mentioned, sort of the public charter school movement is far more mature, and so they've gone through this process throughout the years, and they've figured out how to fine tune the dials to make sure that the folks can hire great people, can retain great people, and can put them on career pathways that allow for sustainable success over time. And then I think they also create a fertile environment for awareness for parents. I think it's important that our parents understand what the options are, that they know how to access different types of schooling and can make the best decision for their children. In many of these places, there are also different philanthropic opportunities. In particular, in places like Houston and Denver, there are assets that schools can tap into to bridge the divide, the funding gaps that charter schools typically face.
Yeah, and one follow-up, if I could. I know you haven't been in Maine very long, but how did the charter schools handle the COVID situation, and any things that you folks did that would be transferable to public schools?
Well, that's
being successful.
Yes, sir. I think that's a great question. We've actually been talking quite a bit about this because that was something that I was very interested in throughout my interview process as well. One thing that I was really excited to learn about was that all of our schools were required to have anytime, anywhere learning plans. And so those plans were set in place prior to the pandemic. But were very thoughtful plans by each of the charter schools that said, if there's a snow day or if there's a school shutdown, here's how we're going to deal with continuing to learn during those school shutdowns. And so our public charter schools were already prepared for that. Now, nobody really knew what the scope of the pandemic would bring us, but that forethought did allow them to continue some momentum during the springtime when schools shut down. And I know that the state has taken some steps toward things like that as well, so that should disruptions happen, I think that's an easily transferable sort of planning process. A few of our charter school leaders also were involved in the planning for the online learning system for Moose as well. And so we're really excited that collaboration happened between traditional folks and our charter folks as well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
That's really interesting to hear on the Moose front. And I've got to say, if you see me dancing all around the screen, I apologize. My hound dog is bringing me as an offering. So I'm still listening, but just trying to not get a bone stuck on my foot. Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mr. Jones, for being here. And welcome to the state of Maine. I echo Representative Crockett's positive thoughts. I would urge you to think about whether or not you are interested in coastal or inland property. That would help your real estate agent to best serve you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You're welcome. And you'll love it. This is the place to be. In the interest of time, I will not ask all of my questions, but I would make this request, please. When we next see you and we are discussing your report, your compilation of information from the charter schools, I hope that you have received guidance about making that consistent reporting from school to school. Last session, we found ourselves flipping between pages with inconsistent methodology of reporting. So I would just make that request, please. Thank you so much. And again, welcome. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Of course.
Yes, ma'am. And just quickly to respond to that, Representative Dodge, thank you for that. I will go back through the report again this afternoon. We're submitting it to the commission members for our business meeting, which happens on Tuesday. I have been spending a majority of time this week doing just that, making sure that everything is very consistent. As a former assistant superintendent myself, I understand that it's incredibly important to have a dashboard so that you can actually see and measure from school to school how we are doing against those performance metrics. And we'll take the opportunity to do that another time with a fine-tooth comb. So thank you for that.
Any more questions from the committee? I don't know, Ms. Barnum, if you have anything you'd like to add before we move on to the next group of presentations.
No, all set, and thank you for having us today, and again, introducing you to Jeremy Jones, our new executive director. So we're really excited to have some fresh eyes on the charter schools, public charter schools here in the state of Maine, and excited to have his energy, as you can tell. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions from the committee, I want to thank you both for your time this morning, and we look forward to working with you in the future, Mr. Jones.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
Of course, and good luck on the move. Up
Thank
next,
you.
we have the Maine Association of Independent Schools joining us. Let's see. Good morning. Not sure who's going to kick it off for Micah, but we're ready whenever you are.
Good morning. My name is Ray Menard. I'm the headmaster at Thornton Academy, and I'm here to speak with you all about the Maine Association of Independent Schools. My colleague, Marcia Diamond, should be on this call. I'm not sure if she's here. We do, and we do have a slideshow for you. So we're going to try to get that up right now.
Absolutely.
Okay, can everyone see this slideshow?
Yep.
Terrific, terrific. Well, again, good morning, Senator Daughtry, Representative Brennan, members of the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee. We thank you for inviting us to be with you today. I'd like to take a few minutes and talk to you about the membership of the Maine Association of Independent Schools, and then I'll turn things over to my colleague, Marcia Diamond, to talk with you about the impact that COVID-19 has had on both our students, our staff, and our schools. So if we progress through our slideshow here, hopefully this works. Move to our second slide. All right, thank you. So you'll see that we are among the oldest schools in the state of Maine. We're the forerunners of public education in the state. And some of our schools like Berwick Academy and Freiburg Academy that you see on the screen are among the oldest schools in the United States. Our next slide has a list of our 23 member schools and the year in which each was founded. And you'll see that our Maine roots run deep. Many of us received our charters from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts decades before Maine gained statehood. And we're a diverse group of schools. We're geographically spread across the state. We educate students from pre-K through grade 12 and a PG year. And the size of our schools vary dramatically. Our smallest school has fewer than 100 students, and our largest school, Thornton Academy, has over 1,600 students, making it the largest school, either public or private, in the state of Maine. Our structure and mission are also unique among our 23 member schools. We have 10, if we look at our next slide here. Thank you. We have 10 town academies. And the town academies are schools like Freiburg Academy and Foxcroft Academy, often serve as the de facto public schools for a number of towns here in Maine. When the state required towns to provide compulsory public education in the latter part of the 19th century, many of these independent schools and towns forged partnerships. And these independent schools, existing independent schools, agreed to educate local students at public expense, rather than have these communities build and operate their own public high schools. So for example, Thornton Academy is located in Saco, Maine. There's never been a Saco high school. Thornton Academy has always provided the public education for the residents of Saco since our founding. We also, while each town academy also has a boarding population, we have 8 member schools that are primarily boarding schools, and they educate boarding students from across Maine, across the US, and also internationally. And we also represent 5 day schools. These are traditional independent schools that draw students throughout a region and across many cities and towns in the state of Maine. Our association educates approximately 9,000 students And about half of those students are publicly funded through town academies, and the other half are privately funded students. Non-public schools educate approximately 18,000, or about 10% of the K through 12 population in the state of Maine. And we also have a positive impact on the state's economy. Obviously, our mission is education, but we are private employers, and we do employ over 2,200 people throughout the state of Maine. You can see we paid over $120 million in salaries and benefits. And a couple of years ago, back in 2018, we hired economist Chuck Lawton's firm to do an economic impact study. And he conservatively estimated that just the MIS schools, not private schools throughout Maine, but just the schools in our association, had a positive impact of about $350 million on the Maine economy. And every Maine student that attends one of our independent schools reduces the burden and the expense on the public school system, which saves taxpayers at both the state and local level. But we certainly share many of the same challenges as our public school colleagues. We see a decline in the school-age population across the state of Maine, and we're all working hard to be financially sustainable. And with all of us, both publics and independent schools, are certainly accountable to our students and our families. And because of our structure, if we do not serve students well, then we are certainly apt to lose the tuition necessary to keep our schools in operation. So again, we're all doing our best to serve our students and families well. And we're working hard to support the needs of our students, our families, and our staffs as we all grapple with the challenges of the pandemic. Unlike public schools, we can't raise revenue through taxation. I think that's probably an obvious statement, nor can we access the state's school construction and renovation fund. So all of our capital projects are funded privately. And I think most people probably understand that with the traditional independent schools, but that's also true for the town academies, which are, again, the de facto public high schools for many towns throughout the state of Maine. And every construction project, renovation project is funded with private funds. So each of us also must rely on these private fundraising efforts to fully fund our operating costs. And again, as you can imagine, our fundraising efforts have been even more challenging this recent year during the pandemic, as so many of our families and community members have felt the economic impacts of this crisis. I'm going to turn things over to my colleague, Marcia Diamond, and I'm going to ask her to continue to speak with you about the impacts of COVID-19. Marcia?
Thank you, Rennie, and good morning, Senator Daughtry, Representative Brennan, and members of the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee. We're glad to be here with you today. I am Marcia Diamond, and I'm the head of school of the Bay School, which is a small independent school in Blue Hill. My job today is to talk with you a little bit about the impact of COVID-19 on our independent schools in the state of Maine. And the most important thing we feel it's good for all of you to hear is that in this public health crisis, COVID doesn't stop at the schoolhouse door. It doesn't discriminate by the type of school or the human being. And we have students in our independent schools, faculty and staff, parents, families, and community members that are all affected by COVID-19. Important for all of you to know, if you don't, that our independent schools are being held to the same health and safety standards as the public schools during this public health crisis. So we are required to do the 3 to 6 foot distancing. Students and faculty wear masks inside and out. There are a number of other health and safety standards that we're required to follow. And of course, those come with costs. And so I'm going to talk in just a minute about some of the impact of that. But really what is most important is that our students have had the same social and emotional impacts as all students in Maine. When we all went to remote learning in the spring and students had to use screens far more than they were, attendance was difficult as we had students who couldn't navigate either internet or didn't have access to technology and other devices. The lack of sports and social opportunities has had an impact on our students. And there are many other examples, but it is really a consideration for all of us that COVID-19, again, isn't just impacting one group of students, it's impacting all of us. We also want to make a point that we have been open, just like the public schools. We've had a red, a yellow, and a green plan, and we have been following those according to state guidelines. And so we have been open in the ways that we can and maintaining fairly low COVID transmission rates. But again, there are financial impacts of COVID-19 on our schools, and I'm going to talk just a little bit about that. We, like the public schools, have had to spend millions to open safely with sufficient funds. You can imagine that just like the public schools, it's been very expensive. The example we have here is one of our schools with an $18 million budget has had $1.35 million in COVID expenses. And those are to meet the safety and health guidelines that are required for all of us to be safely in school. Our main boarding schools saw a significant drop this year in their boarding student population. And of course, there's associated revenue that goes with that, as those students who come to us from other locations not only increase our diversity, which is good for our schools, it's good for our other students, and it's good for our state, but it is a tremendous drop in revenue that many of our schools count on. For those schools that have summer programs or facility rentals, you can imagine that during last summer, when all of us had to be closed, we had a significant loss during that time period. Rennie mentioned just a little bit about the funding and the way funding works for publicly funded students who attend independent schools in Maine. And that's at the K through 12 level. For example, I'm a very small school, but I do have about 15% of my population in a K-8 school is publicly funded students. Of course, the town academies are made up of primarily publicly funded students. And so there is a real impact in what we've all seen in the maximum allowable tuition that this year, for the school year, is coming in at 0.3% increase over last year. And there is a formula that's used to create what the maximum allowable tuition is. And there's a number of us who've been working very closely with the Department of Ed, and we appreciate their cooperation in looking at how those numbers are being calculated, because it simply doesn't really make sense that those costs in public schools are going down, basically, and our independent schools are relying on those funds to educate the publicly funded students. We have had some federal financial support for our independent schools during COVID-19, and we've also been disappointed at some of the lack of access to the public funding that has been available. Some of our schools did receive the payroll protection plan loans in the spring. Those were designed to help us maintain our employment levels that kept faculty and staff employed, helped our communities, and kept those individuals off the state unemployment rolls. Our goal, obviously, was to keep our teachers in the classrooms as much as we could with their remote learning for students, and we were primarily able to do that. But of course, there was, in some schools, an accompanying tuition loss because students were not part of the program. There were two other funding programs that were distributed through the state of Maine. The first one that I'll mention is the COVID Relief Fund 1 and 2. And the state of Maine decided only to fund publicly funded students. In other words, an associated cost went to those schools that have publicly funded students, but only per individual. So all of these students, all of Maine students who were affected by COVID, didn't see that money follow them to the schools that are educating them. We also had ESSER funds, which was another federal program that was distributed last summer. And the allocation was intended to go to low-income students in areas where it could best be served. And the problem with that is that not all schools have a Title I program, because it's generally an elementary school program. And so most of our schools did not receive any money through the ESSER fund allocation. We also didn't get access to the technology grant for remote learners. The state offered to local superintendents an opportunity to identify students who needed technology in their homes, and that was not offered to the independent schools. We do have pending an emergency assistance for non-public schools funding grant that the governor, I believe, is applying for next week. And that came through Congress specifically to try to help address the fact that in most states, non-public schools have not been funded the way we have all needed during COVID-19. And so, of course, we have questions ourselves, and I'm sure you have some for us. But we all are wondering, what does the next school year look like? We have to go into the year at this point, assuming that we still will be in our 6-foot distancing or 3 to 6 foot with our masks. We don't know who will be vaccinated by the fall. We have an aging population, as you probably know, among our teachers, and many are very concerned about their own health and safety. And that's true for public school teachers and private school teachers. We don't know if the international and domestic boarding school student population will recover. And we don't know yet whether state funding, especially the MAT, will increase or decrease. And that makes it very uncertain for our schools. And so those are all questions that we certainly have on our minds. And we are certainly happy at this point to answer any that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do I have any questions from the committee? Senator Woodson.
Good morning. Having taught at 29 years at Freiburg Academy, which was a great experience, it's certainly a very unique environment. And it just having foreign students mixed with the local kids was just a wonderful experience. But just as a side note, I first met Headmaster Menard in the 1990s at Freiburg Academy. I believe he was an ETEP student, and there was some great ETEP candidates that came out and super teachers, and I'm so proud of Rainey, what he has done. But a question, I think maybe for Ms. Diamond, since she brought it up, why were the independent schools not available? Why weren't technology funds available for these schools?
Well, at each turn, as the various federal programs were revealed, we were simply told what our allocation amounts were. And so those were basically predetermined, and we did question our ability to access those, but at that point they'd already been distributed. So again, I will say that the Department of Education has been very open to talking with us about the fact that we were left out of many of those programs, but it was treated as if it's a too late to do anything about it kind of problem. And so we are really working to make sure we're ahead of it as much as we can possibly be going forward for any federal funding in particular that is available for independent schools. But the department did have to act quickly. I mean, everybody needed the money. We all needed to get going to get our kids back in school or into remote learning. But that was the answer that we had. And we were simply told that was not being made available to independent schools.
Okay, and a little follow-up question. How much technology is available, technology education is available in the various independent schools across the state, do you know?
I guess I'm not sure exactly if your question is how much do we use technology or how much do we need? I'm not sure the question.
Well, learning opportunities for the students is what I'm looking at.
Right. I think it would vary from school to school, sometimes based on their philosophy, but I would certainly say that technology is expensive. And so for those schools that are looking to increase their capacity, it's limited and funding is needed for that.
And one last question. Does the geography of the different schools, say Freiburg or Foxcroft, did that impact the online learning because of broadband?
Oh, significantly. I think we all would agree. Here at my school, we have no broadband, and many of my students don't even have access to good cell service. I'm sure that's true of many of our students in rural communities. And I know that's something that really needs to be addressed overall at the state level, but it had a huge impact in students' ability to access the remote learning that simply was all we could offer in the spring, and which many students are accessing now, often in a hybrid model, because schools can't fit all of the students in the school with the 3 to 6 foot distancing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I noticed that Representative Millette has been able to join us. So I don't know, Representative Millette, if you'd like to introduce yourself real quick.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Representative Rebecca Millette. I represent House District 30, which is most of Cape Elizabeth.
Thank you. Then I have Representative Crockett with a question, followed by Representative McCray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A two-part question. One, I live in Portland, and I was raised in Portland. And for my first 11 years of school, I went to parochial school. So I did not notice the elementary and middle school, like St. Bridget's here in Portland, wasn't on your list, but are they considered part of the independent schools?
There's certainly independent schools. I think, I don't want to speak for them, but some of the parochial schools, I think they have similar associations. For example, Cheverus is a member of both the Maine Association of Independent Schools, and I believe they're an association of Catholic schools as well. But
yeah, thanks for clarifying that. The other question I had is, I think St. Bridget's here in Portland has been totally on site since COVID hit, whereas the rest of the city of Portland has been in a hybrid situation. I'd be real curious to get the COVID-related numbers out of the independent schools. Your presentation said they were I don't know the exact wording, were manageable or very positive. If we could take a little deeper dive into that, I'd like to see it.
Thank you, Representative Crockett. I don't know if anyone wanted to follow up to that or jump on to the next question. If not, Representative McCray, I do believe you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Menard and Ms. Diamond. Aside from the financial and funding issues related to COVID that Ms. Diamond so well explained, just a brief comment, I guess, or description of to what degree do the independent schools have to follow all of the rules and regulations of DOE compared to just the fully public schools? Just a very brief comment on that. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. I can answer, and I invite Marcia and our other colleague Jeff Burrows if they'd like to jump in. So in Maine statute, to be an approved school, you can either go through the DOE process, or you can be accredited through an accrediting body such as the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. So all of the members of the Maine Association of Independent Schools are accredited. And so in many ways, NEASC, that organization, is the one that sort of sets the standards in terms of the quality. There are certainly basic standards that apply to all schools in terms of safety, health and safety matters, that sort of thing. And then there's another category of schools. I mentioned the town academies. And the town academies, oftentimes in statute, I don't think you'll see the term town academy, but you might see the phrase 60% school. And it refers to the fact that for any independent school that has more than 60% of the students publicly funded, there are another set of criteria that we would have to abide to regarding the DOE, primarily around Maine's learning standards and the assessment system. And you may know for years in the state of Maine, it was the SAT, and now the state is looking at another assessment. So we will provide that assessment system, whatever it might be, to all of our public funded students, and we share that information with the DOE. And then again, primarily it's around matters of safety and well-being. We report data regarding our faculty. All our staff members are certainly have gone through the criminal history record checks, and we provide information on attendance and other matters that the state or the commission may require.
Thank you. And I did just want to pull up for members the lovely purple book of 20A of statutes, especially for new members. Everything that was just discussed is within the book. I do believe, I was trying to pull it up, I think it's on page 103 is the beginning of the portion of accreditation. But there is a really, for folks who are just navigating the book for the first time, there's a really helpful index. So if you're ever wondering, you know, about some of the statutes or anything like that, make sure you have this nearby. It's really, really helpful. And I see Jan not only has the next question, but already has her book out.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. In the interest of time, again, I just will ask at our future meetings if you folks might be able to address these questions. Number one, in relation to Representative McCrae's question, my diversion from that is around special ed rules and regs at the independent schools. And the other question is a more detailed explanation of the funding that Ms. Diamond was describing to help us as a committee understand if the state was not meeting the funding obligation of the publicly funded students within your schools, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Dodge. And I will just mention that that is part of the regular meetings that we're having with the Maine DOE, is digging a little deeper into how publicly funded students are funded, because we've looked at statute, we've looked at patterns over time, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to us either. And so we're looking forward to kind of solving that problem with them to determine what the adequate level of funding should be.
And if I may, Madam Chair, a brief follow-up. Can you give us the statutorial reference as Senator Daughtry did that relates to that, please? Thank you.
I believe it's 5806.
And Representative, let's see, oh no, Representative Dodge. So Senator Rafferty, I'm lowering your hand for you, Jan.
Thank you, and thank you folks both for being here this morning with us. We appreciate it. This is another follow-up to a funding question. When you were going through your presentation, there was some references for funding that were based on Title I, and that's primarily an elementary school. So is there an equivalent venue for you folks to access that money, or does that money just not available to you because you don't deliver education to that grade level?
For any independent schools that do have publicly funded students, there also is an MAT calculation as well. I mentioned earlier that I have about 15% of the students that attend my school who are publicly funded because their local elementary school doesn't have an elementary school and they're given school choice. So that's unusual in the K-8 environment, as most towns do have either an elementary school or an agreement, but there is a similar model.
Thank you.
Do I have any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you all for taking the time today to join us. I know for all of our educators and educational institutions, this is a trying time on so many different levels. And
Senator Daughtry, can I just make a quick, this is Dan Walker from Bridge. I just want to say, we'll work with, so my name is Dan Walker. I'm an attorney at Pretty Flaherty. So you'll be seeing me and my colleague Diane Johansson from Pretty Flaherty as well. We represent the Maine Association of Independent Schools, and we'll work closely with all these folks who you just heard from to get questions back, answers to your questions. So just wanted to say hi. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Walker. And seeing no further questions, thank you everyone for joining us and for the presentation. up next, I do believe, Sam, we have Ms. Williams would like to go at closer to 11, correct?
I think we're okay to go with Kylie with the Ocean School. And Miss Williams just requested at some point between 11 and 12. So I think we have that full hour window.
Perfect. So up next, we have the Maine Ocean School. Kylie Bragdon joining us. Good morning. Once she's got her audio, I think we're ready to get going. Welcome. Oh, you're on mute.
Well, awkward as always. At least I still have that going for me. Good morning, Senator Daughtry, Representative Brennan, and distinguished members of the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee. My name is Dr. Kylie Bragdon, and I'm the Executive Director of Maine Ocean School. It's so nice to see some familiar faces today. So if it's okay, I think I'll just go ahead with my presentation. Thank you so much. Today, I'm hoping to give you the perspective of someone on the operational level in a school currently in Maine. Though our school is quite small, as you'll see here in our presentation, there's some features that we've been able to implement that have made our program incredibly successful. With that, however, I think there are a number of challenges that I'd also like to discuss with you. And of course, I'm very happy to take any questions you might have. So if we could go ahead, I believe somebody else is in control of the PowerPoint, unless I misunderstood.
Sam, do we have slides for that, or is that something that?
We do have slides, but Kylie, if you have it, I think the chairs have been okay with the presenters presenting their own slideshow, but I'll defer to the senator on that.
Of course, no, I can. Yes. I can absolutely do that. Please just give me a second. I will get ourselves set up.
No worries.
Share screen.
There we go.
All right. So here we are. So, Maine Ocean School. If you're not familiar with the school, we are the state's second ever magnet school, which opened in 2018 with only 12 students. By definition, a magnet school is just a public entity. It's a public school which offers specialized instruction or programs around a specific curricular theme. So this model of schools really first came about in the 1960s when they were hoping to diversify student bodies. And in doing that, what happened was common interests were found for students such as STEM, media and arts, or in some cases like us, the ocean. And by attracting students by that similar common theme, the diversity in the student body was achieved. So our small school currently offers 4 specialized tracks, including marine science, transportation engineering, and management. However, the way I kind of like to describe it to everyone is, if you want to be a tugboat captain to a lobster fisherman to a marine biologist or an aquaculture specialist, whatever your ocean-related goal is, we're really the school to come to help you meet those goals and create a proactive plan for achieving that. We do implement what's known as internally as a hands-on, minds-on teaching model. So essentially, we're trying to get kids to problem solve and utilize and develop real skills by actually doing work in the field. As you can imagine, as COVID-19 came to surface, there were some impacts there, and we'll discuss that a little bit more in a moment. So prior to COVID-19 kind of letting loose in the United States, we did have a really successful fall and winter. We had 14 students in our second year with 4 staff members. Of the staff members, we had a full-time humanities teacher, a science teacher, an administrative assistant / ed tech, and then myself fulfilling the role of not only executive director, but also I'm the math teacher as well. We do have a curricular focus on problem solving and teamwork, and really what we like to do is give kids opportunities to learn from professionals in the field. A couple of photographs that I've included here in the bottom lower left, this is an event where we hosted with the Sea Scouts. We had a training where students came in and just learned how to be silly with one another, but in a controlled fashion to reach overall goals. In addition to that, we also have a lot of opportunities for career exploration and training. Our students completed the OSHA shipyard training last year and will graduate with full certification. They also completed ServSafe restaurant training, and were given the opportunity to do a number of site visits. In the top left-hand corner, they're actually at the Lyman Morse boat building facility, but we also took the kids to places like the Portland Port Authority and the Rockport Marina. We had weekly guest speakers, professionals in the field, ranging from specialists in seabirds to model boat builders to sea captains and even aquaculture specialists. We really make this a priority within our academic program because we want students to understand the full breadth of opportunities that are available to them in this state. We also want to give them the hands-on experiences so that they can be fully prepared for those types of careers when they enter the workforce. So in March of 2020, just like every other school district in the state, we had some very serious decisions in front of us. Thankfully, however, at the time, my teachers were implementing an interdisciplinary project, specifically around viruses and the spread of viruses and how it impacts our societies. And the students were actually creating models, as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, of the virus itself, but also we're watching the spread of it as it kind of worked its way across the globe. The bubble map that you see in the top left-hand corner was just a few weeks prior to our closures. And at the same time in our humanities courses, students were creating their own emergency response plans. I was incredibly thankful that we decided to pursue this unit of study because when the decision was made to translate ourselves into an online model, students understood why that transition was necessary and therefore were more easily able to buy into that virtual structure. I'm very proud of my staff. In our transition, it only took us one day of lost instruction, and we transferred everything from an in-person model to online Google Classrooms. From there, for the rest of the spring, we had daily live instruction with our kids. We hosted courses as if it was just a regular day. It just so happened that the students were at home, safely at home, and our teachers were able to correspond with them that way. Largely, the program itself in the spring was successful because we had pre-existing one-to-one technologies for each of our students. I think that's especially important when considering the virtual model. Also, we were very lucky that all of our students had consistent Wi-Fi access. We as a school, given the number of students that we had, also had the luxury of having frequent, consistent communication with all stakeholders within the school community. That meant frequent communication between the teachers, parents, board members, and students, just so that across the board, the expectations were understood and follow through was being held accountable. Oh, in the spring, there were some challenges. It was certainly different being in an online model and unexpected to a degree, but we did have some victories. And one of them was, we had continued academic progress in all of our courses for all of our kids. The last time we appeared before the Education Committee, a large part of what I took away was how a magnet school is really, it's defined by its academic caliber. It is of utmost importance for magnet schools in this state to continue to support and challenge our students because we are looking for exceptionality in those school structures. So all of our courses continue to move forward. Though the rate was a little bit less than what we could expect in person, there was a little bit of a learning curve there, students were still able to complete exceptional projects. All of our juniors and seniors completed capstone projects. One you can see in the bottom right-hand corner. The essential question there was, how do leaders make hard decisions? A seemingly appropriate presentation and study at the time. In addition to that, we had overall very consistent student attendance with more than 90% of student days being fulfilled, which was wonderful to see. And we also had our very first graduation, a very big accomplishment for us. When considering our focuses for the summer, it seemed like we had a lot to do and not a whole lot of time to do it in, but we made the best of our efforts and were able to accomplish quite a lot. The first thing was the implementation of a virtual summer program. In collaboration with the Penobscot Marine Museum, we developed 4 asynchronous learning opportunities so prospective or current students could, remain current in their learning. This included some historical information around ships. We did a cargo shipping project and also a marine species identification project. This also led us later on to participate in the Moose, the main base project system. I was involved in the Q2 rollout of that program, and now currently myself and both of my staff members are completing the Moose project. So great experiences that have all led up to that. From there, we also looked really heavily at student recruitment and enrollment. Because of our success with the online model overall, it gained a lot of interest from outside entities. We had a number of students who were formerly homeschooled that actually transitioned into our program because of the curricular focus that we offer. I think in many cases, what we're seeing in the other public schools, it's actually going into the reverse. So it's just interesting how that common theme can attract students further. From there, we did develop a framework for returning to class instruction, which incorporated all 6 of the parameters as laid out by the state. We had a tiered red, yellow, and green system for identifying when it would be safe and appropriate for students to be in class. And we made sure that our communication plans and strategies for problem solving during the school year were set out. So when moments of urgency were posed, we could take care of situations proactively. We also prepared classrooms and secured necessary cleaning and protective equipment. We were recipients of both the CRF 1 and 2 allocations. Most of our financing went directly to our classroom needs. Classroom on the right there, as you can see, the way that we've decided to structure things is each student has their own individual space. And that space it includes a table, which it's not your typical classroom desk. And the reason being, I wanted to make sure that if a student had to transition to online learning permanently, or if they happened to go out into the field and they needed a working space, they could have that. So the desk that you see there, those are all repurposed camp tables that we were a little creative with, and they have attachments so that the legs are extendable. This allows the students to take their materials home, should they need them, to the beach, if they need them, wherever it might be. We also have spray guards on all of our desks to make sure that we have the most safety equipment possible for all of our students. At all times, we do make sure that our students are 6 feet apart, they're wearing masks, and they're practicing hand hygiene, just normal protocols in our day-to-day school operations. Throughout the summer, we also updated our technology. Though we did have the one-to-one devices due to the influx in our student enrollment for the following year, we needed to make sure we had enough technology on hand, as well as technology that allowed us to assess students in unique fashions. And that's kind of tying into the next one, where we determined new strategies for instruction and assessment. But we quickly had to adopt things like Kahoot, Google breakout rooms. We're strong users of the Khan Academy system and video editing systems. And we just tried to incorporate as much as we could so that we gave students a more diverse array of opportunities for demonstrating their learning. Then the fall of 2020, sorry about that. Fall of 2020, we had 23 students enroll this fall, which, we had 3 students graduate the previous year, so only 11 of our 23 students were returning. They did come from 14 different communities. We actually had students as far away as Machias down to the York region, so quite a spread there. We had students engaging both virtually and then in person, and in options hybrid as well. Because of our size, we were able to set it up such that we have 2 different cohorts. We have a 9-10 classroom and then an 11-12 classroom. So within each classroom, student has their own specific space, but because of the number of students that we have enrolled, we've been able to be more flexible as to when students come in to the school environment, allowing them to access in-person learning as many days a week as they would like to have. We do still have our daily direct engagement with teaching staff. So we have a 4-block system. Every day, whether you're a virtual student or an in-person student, you're going to log into class and you're going to have that live engagement. And finally, we've been able to incorporate hands-on learning opportunities and field work whenever possible. A couple of fun photos here. We did have in the top left some mud sampling, made the classrooms a little stinky, but the kids really enjoyed identifying species. We did some shoreline measurements, bottom left there, and to the right, you can see a student participating in our Searsport crab survey. On our next slide, though I certainly won't play these now, I have shared this presentation with your clerk. So if you have a moment, I really encourage you to take just a few seconds to watch some of the videos. These are student submissions for assignments that we've completed this year. In the top left, this is some aerial footage, drone footage from a student who captured our crab survey. We have done things like boat building, competitions where students utilized resources around their home to create boats. That's the bottom video there. And to the top right for our PE course, kids were creating their own fitness videos. And I have to tell you, that fitness video, someday that kid is going to make some really impressive movies. I would give that a watch if you have a moment. It's good for a laugh. Oop, don't want to play it. Don't want to play it. Sorry about that. So fall success stories, I think overall, though it has been challenging, I mean, this is my 10th year in education and it's far different than anything I've ever experienced, but I would say overall it's gone okay. The things I'm most proud of, we've been able to maintain the health and safety of our entire school community. We've had consistent student attendance and work completion, which is really important to us. We have implemented RTI, an RTI structure, otherwise known as a multi-tiered system of support for supporting students. Essentially, this is a process where the teachers and I meet bi-weekly to identify when and if students are having difficulties. We have 4 key parameters that we assess students on, and we have steps, proactive steps, once students categorize in a certain way to make sure that they do not fall too far behind. We've also incorporated the NWEA benchmark assessment, which is part of our annual reporting. We've since tested students twice this school year and have already seen significant levels of growth. Students are demonstrating between 5 and 31 points of growth in some of their content areas, which given the circumstances, I'm especially happy with. Finally, we've had some pretty great engagement with the community in a number of meaningful ways. Primarily, if you're unaware, there was an incident on Sears Island where some debris washed up on the shore. The students and I were able to make our way down there for the day and participated in the shore cleanup. And actually in the top right-hand corner, you can see a little news segment where our students were included on a CNNBC clip. It was a really great experience for them. When thinking about our success, I think that we can really fall on a couple of key attributes that have supported us. I have been very, very focused and proactive on maintaining the safety of our kids. And when making decisions, I'm always taking into account what's going to be best for them and their families. That means for us and around school vacations, extending the time students spend at home. So they have a week at which they do virtual learning just to make sure any potential threats could be identified. We also have established school-based norms to create the creative or a cohesive learning environment. So what you have in one class, the expectations in one class, it's going to be the same in the next class that you have. We have consistent and frequent communication with parents, and I'm very thankful that our school size is as small as it is because we have a very accurate account of where students are day to day. That allows us to, when we see non-normative behavior, to contact parents to make sure that the supports are in place to continue in their studies. Finally, we have implemented a number of strategies for developing study skills when students necessarily don't have the skills in place that they need in order to learn in the virtual environment. We have maintained a focus on students and just having fun in general. One example of that is on the left-hand side. Around the holidays, we had a gingerbread boat making contest. And, you know, it's really hard to teach in this virtual format sometimes because you don't always necessarily have the same connections with your students. But by doing silly things like this, you really get to create those connections and see kids laugh, and it makes the experience more valuable, not only for them, but everyone else who's involved. Now, I would be a fool to say that there haven't been certain challenges in regards to COVID. Personnel limitations are one that we face. Currently, we still have only a staff of 4, and in a scenario, if somebody was to fall ill or maybe not necessarily be able to perform all of the components of their position, it would be hard to cover those needs. Outside of that, we also have funding. As it currently stands, the Maine Ocean School receives approximately 1/3 of our operational budget from the DOE or from state funds. The remaining 2/3 we actually fundraise through the help of our foundation. Now, as you guys are all probably aware, the landscape of donations and fundraising changed significantly as the pandemic set in. And though we have found financing and are in a much better spot now, there was some challenges that we faced during the summer months. And then finally, we have that sunset clause. As you are also probably aware, Representative Scott Cuddy has submitted a bill on our behalf where we hope to obtain removal of that clause so that we can remain in operation. On the right there is a little image about an upcoming event on February 25th. I encourage you all to participate if you're interested. Just more information on the school and ways that people can be involved. And that's it for me, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bragdon. Do I have any questions from the committee? Representative McCray.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for being here. As I recall from previous presentations, you do not have boarding facilities for your students. They are fairly regional and basically live at home or with relatives and whatnot. And I see that you're expanding, and I think you mentioned you picked up new students that were perhaps former homeschooled students. And that's good. I'm glad to see your increased enrollment, but they range from Machias to York, which begs the question, okay, so if you're from Machias or if you're from York and you're not geographically close to where you are, where your school is, are they going to be purely virtual? And is that going to change the way they have all the hands-on and the visits and the field trips and all of the great stuff that you do? What are those kids that are 100 miles away going to do to take advantage of what I see as a former science student as great hands-on stuff? What are they going to do to not miss that?
That's a great question, and that's something we kind of deal with in the day-to-day. So if you're a student in Maine Ocean School, I have a general rule that if you want to be here, you're welcome to be here. And we do, in fact, have students. Our Machias student does come approximately 1 day a week, has transportation to be here in Searsport with us. For those of the students who aren't able to join us, though, we do have the planning internally where we're able to identify what things they might need at home. And we create actual packets that we mail to parents so that they can have the same materials to complete those hands-on projects, which takes a little legwork on our end, but we've been able to work it this far. When it comes to the in-the-field work, unfortunately at this time, we haven't been able to do a great deal of that just because of the different regulations around COVID. But in the future, that's certainly something that we're going to have to consider. I do think with the use of technology, though, it's something that we can capture and live stream that our students could still be involved with regardless of where they're located.
Thank you. Senator Woodson.
Yes, thank you for being here. I didn't catch on what grade levels do you cover, and also with your learning programs with training, is it an internship with the professionals on careers, and how detailed is that?
Great question. So we are currently grades 9 through 12, And we do hope to incorporate internships in the future. However, at this time, it's kind of at a standstill. What we have been able to do is implement capstone projects where students have a minimum of 5 contact hours with current professionals in the field to have some direct information that they can collect for their presentations. In the future, we do hope to have actual field work being conducted by our students for a minimum of 1 semester, but that is a future goal for us.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Representative Stearns.
Good morning, Kylie. I want you to know that I'm a big fan of the magnet model and particularly this Ocean School initiative, having watched it from the beginning. I do have a question. Do you and your board of directors have a plan or a vision for housing students? Because I really feel that with the location you have and the topics that you cover, there'll be students from all across the state of Maine that will be willing to, much like they travel to Limestone for the math and science curriculum, they'll be willing to come to Searsport to experience that type of excellence. So is there any plan afoot to house them?
Yeah, another great question. So last year, we actually had the residential component of our statute removed, therefore making us not required to have those resources available for students. But in my opinion, I agree. It would be foolish not to think that students as far away as Machias would like to come for live in-person instruction daily. So as we grow internally, that is a goal that we have to establish a boarding program, as I do feel it's a really key component to the magnet school model as a whole. So I don't put it on the books, but I would say within 5 years, I would like to see that as a part of our school.
Thank you, Representative Crockett, followed by Representative Millette.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Kylie, thank you so much. First I have to confess I'm embarrassed because I wasn't aware of the Ocean School. Now, I know it's only been around a few years, and I am new to this ed committee, but still. And I'm fascinated by what you're doing and the potential of the school. Now, you had three people graduate last year. I'm curious is the curriculum based for them to go on to higher education, and are you targeting ocean-related curriculum at the college level?
Yes. So the way I like to describe it is whatever your future is, we're going to prepare you for it. So we last year had 3 students whose priority was to pursue post-secondary education. We currently have 2 students actually enrolled at Maine Maritime and are being very successful in those programs. And we have another who was able to get accepted to King's College up in Halifax, but unfortunately due to restrictions hasn't been able to go. I would say as a whole though, do we prepare kids for college? Absolutely, if that's what they want to do. But if they want to be the best lobster fisherman this state has ever seen, I'm also going to make sure that happens too. It's all about individualizing that curriculum. And that's really the key to why we're so successful. Kids are able to come to us and say, this is what I want to do. How do I do it? And we help them figure that out.
Thank you. Any follow-ups, Representative Crockett? Representative Millette?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a point of clarification, Kylie. I believe that legislation that the Ocean School supported in the last legislature, removing the residential, was the one that was how we removed the residential requirement. That was something that supporters of the school were asking us to do to help the school move forward.
Yeah, at the time it certainly was. I think in order to grow our capacities, it was a priority of ours. The need for funding had to be prioritized. And until we have a school that's large and functioning, residential wasn't something that we could consider. However, I do hope in the future, as the school continues to evolve, that's something that we can reincorporate, whether it be through a statutory component or just by establishing it independently.
Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Dr. Bragdon, for your time. I'm sure we'll be talking more in the future, and good luck with everything.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Of course, take care. Up next, we have Educate Maine joining us. I don't know if for everyone in Southern Maine, if you've looked outside, we have perfect movie style snow coming down right now. Okay. Good morning, Mr. Judd.
Good morning.
Here.
No snow for you, Representative Millette? Huh. Who knows? Well, ready for our next presentation. Welcome, Mr. Judd, and we're excited to hear more about Educate Maine.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Senator Daughtry, Representative Brennan, distinguished members of the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee. I'm Jason Judd, and I'm the Executive Director of Educate Maine, which is a business-led education advocacy organization. And I just appreciate the opportunity to share our work with you today and talk a little bit about the pandemic. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I've got a few slides, which I think were shared with the committee potentially this morning. And I'll share them as we go along here. Can you see the slides okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So wanted to start off, what I'm going to do today is really to talk about a little bit about Educate Maine and some of the resources we have, and really talk about the pandemic specifically and what we're seeing with students and educators across the state, knowing that there's some returning members of the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee as well as some new members. So what Educate Maine is all about is championing career readiness by increasing education attainment of Maine people. We believe that education is the foundation to a strong economy in our state. And Educate Maine is made up of 2/3 business leaders on our board and 1/3 educators. So we have educators that are principals, superintendents, CTE directors, former Maine Teachers of the Year, et cetera, to really help inform our work where business and educators can work together on making sure there's a strong education system here in our state. So I wanted to give you a little bit of context to the programs we offer. And I really want to do that because it gives us, it'll give you a sense of the different people that we work with across the year, because many of the things that I'll share in terms of themes on the challenges as well as the opportunities relate to these stakeholders that we work with on a daily basis. So these are our signature programs, these four. Project Login is really focused on building the tech workforce and the power of computer science education specifically, which is, I know, a topic that we've talked about with this committee for a couple of years. Our second program is called the Focus Maine Intern Experience, and that program is about making sure that people that are interning in the state in the summer months really understand the vast majority of career opportunities that are available to them. So what we do is really kind of sell the state of Maine to young interns all across the state in the summertime and convince them to begin their careers in our state specifically with support from Focus Maine. And then the next program I think many of you are very familiar with, we administer the Maine Teacher of the Year program for the Maine Department of Education. And I have to say that today is actually the deadline for nominations for the Maine Teacher of the Year program. So Dolly Sullivan would ask me to make sure that if you have any last minute nominations, they're due by 5 today for the County Teachers of the Year for this particular cycle. So we're really trying to get a record number of nominations of our educators this year, given the pandemic and the extraordinary work that they've done. And then our fourth program is Education Leaders Experience. Many of you have engaged with this program when we've done our legislative day along with Leadership Maine, where we really help educational leaders understand different career industries in our state and different career pathways that their students can take here in our state to be able to thrive. So we basically spend a year with them, visit a whole number of different employers, as well as spend a bunch of time teaching them about policy in Augusta. That program is hybrid this year, so we're doing some in-person events and some virtual. So you can see just from this that we engage with a lot of educators, a lot of business leaders, a lot of college students that are interning, as well as a lot of youth that are working on technology specifically. Wanted to share a couple of resources with the committee before we talk about pandemic response. One is our annual education indicators report, which I think many of you are familiar with. We publish it every year, looking at different indicators from early childhood through adulthood on how Maine is doing in different areas to make sure that we have a really strong education system here in our state. So that publication is available right from our website and really breaks down really important data for you folks to be able to make decisions on funding, on programs, et cetera, all the way, for the whole educational sequence. So really encourage you to share that. I think a colleague might have shared that by email with you as well. It's a good document as you're looking at bills over the next couple of months. And then the second piece, I know so much of this committee has been working with education funding specifically, and every couple of years we update a publication about education funding in the state and really how education is funded. It's one of our policy briefs, and we've recently updated that with the recent investments of the last couple of years. So if you really want to see all the nuts and bolts of education funding to help your work on this committee, that publication's available right on our website as well. Wanted to also touch on our work with the Maine Spark Coalition, which is a very large coalition of organizations that are really focused on increasing the educational attainment of Maine people. We know from the Department of Labor statistics that Maine people need education beyond a high school diploma. And the data shows that by 2025, at least 60% of Maine people will need a credential of value beyond a high school diploma. That number is kind of getting closer to 65, potentially 70% of Maine people need that credential. So a few years ago, we got together along with support from the state of Maine to really kind of come together around this goal and really make sure that we're all working collectively on both short-term and long-term strategies to help more people get educated to be able to thrive in our economy specifically. Your committee was a huge part of that goal. Back in 2017, LD 1638 actually adopted this attainment goal, and built into that language is annual reporting to both your committee as well as the IDEA committee on our progress toward that goal, specifically from both Maine Spark and the State Workforce Board. And by your committee adopting that goal, really put a national spotlight on education attainment in the state, because it was one of the first states in the country to really have the state embrace education attainment and write it into legislation specifically. So I wanted to update you on the progress of the goal, because this is really important as we think about the pandemic and our young people as well as our adults and how they're doing during the pandemic, which is the area that I know that you folks are talking about today. So you'll see this is our graph from 2008 that shows the number of people with a 4-year degree, a 2-year degree, a certificate or a certification beyond high school is up now to 50.5%. So our goal is 60% by 2025. And you'll notice we've been making pretty steady progress toward that goal. Much of the progress has been on short-term credentialing, certificates, and our 4-year degree numbers have stayed pretty steady. But if you look at Maine's number compared to the rest of the country, we've actually gained, we're one of the fastest gaining states in terms of credentials of value beyond high school, which is something that both this committee as well as the organizations in the state that are involved in this work should be really proud of. Obviously, we need this to keep going up, as opposed to having the pandemic potentially have the graph go in the other direction. So I want to talk a little bit about the challenges of the pandemic, because we at Educate Maine, we're in this interesting spot, especially during the pandemic, where we're really at sort of the crossroads with educators and employers and students. So we kind of hear feedback from a variety of individuals and organizations all throughout this period of time. Obviously, you folks as a committee have talked about the quick transition of educational institutions to the response of the pandemic back in March. We should all be really proud of those efforts to basically make everything go virtual very, very quickly. As an education nonprofit, we're particularly concerned about the health and well-being of our educators, our early childhood educators, our K-12 educators, our higher educators, as well as the people that might not be teachers but support kids in some way. We're worried about them being able to be successful and be able to thrive over these next couple of months, because their jobs kind of keep getting harder as this pandemic continues. And we need to constantly be thinking about ways that we can help them thrive in their opportunities. As you might have heard from some of the groups you've heard from already, we're concerned certainly about some disengaged learners. We're concerned about the ones who didn't actually start pre-K and kindergarten programs, as well as folks that chose not to engage their students in school this year. I think you've seen some of that data in past presentations, as well as we're concerned about students that are connected to school formally, but are not being seen every day or not participating every day as they should. And that's a concern, I think, for all of us. And with that comes some equity concerns, specifically making sure that as we look at our disaggregated data and we look at that data based on gender and race and socioeconomic status, et cetera, we're still seeing significant gaps on success during the pandemic. What we've been seeing from our educator network and hearing is concern about student aspirations, especially thinking toward the future about young people not knowing whether college is the right step for them right now for next fall, not knowing if they should go to work full time to support their families. So we're hearing a lot of folks really concerned about what more can we do to lift students' aspirations, even in this challenging time with the pandemic. Specifically. And along with that, we're seeing data that college applications are down in Maine. First generation college applications are significantly down, as well as we hear from our higher ed institutions that applications are down. So a lot of the conversations we've been having in Educate Maine are, who can we partner with? How can we work together with the higher ed institutions to make sure that we're giving as many supports as possible so that students are following their post-secondary plans, they're applying to college, they're filling out their FAFSA. And then if they decide they want to wait a little bit, that's okay, but making sure that the doors stay open for them to pursue their pathways specifically. And then a couple of the other challenges, which I know are you folks have talked about some, is certainly the long-term educator workforce piece. We're worried that some folks are not choosing to go into the teaching profession right now because they're seeing how hard our educators are working, and that is sometimes detrimental to thinking about that profession. So how can we partner with the Department of Education, who's doing a lot of work in this area, as well as other nonprofits, to really make sure that we're continuing to raise educators up and raise the field up and make sure that young people see it as a wonderful field to go into here in our state specifically. And then the two other areas are certainly the broadband piece. We're hearing that from every educator we interact with, whether they're taking care of babies or they're taking care of and supporting adult learners. We've got to have more support there for equitable access. And then certainly, I think this is an interesting one coming from our seat, is we've been hearing so much from employers about the need for high quality, accessible childcare for their workers, which we've been saying for many years, and we've talked about in this group for many years, but we've been hearing it all the time from our employers now, which I actually look to as an opportunity that we should support. So those are a few challenges, some that you've talked about, I think, at length as a committee, some that I really want to focus on student aspirations and that kind of post-secondary piece, which I think are so important from where we sit. And then I wanted to share a couple of opportunities in the pandemic and kind of some bright spots as we look forward, because what we're trying to do is, yes, support the short term, but also look at the long term of what are some positive opportunities from the pandemic that we might be able to talk about and support from a long-term planning perspective. And certainly one of those is around the childcare piece and the broadband piece, which are my two examples here to kick off this side. Specifically, there's been really good energy in both of those areas. And I think, a significant need that we have to address through public-private partnerships moving forward. Also a recognition for multiple career pathways. I think that The pandemic has really shown that we've got to provide young people a whole variety of short-term and long-term educational programs that can help them get the skills that they need for high quality employment and high quality of life. We've also seen, I think there's a great opportunity about the importance of educators, which has been so significant during the pandemic. So how do we keep the support of educators front and center beyond the pandemic, celebrate them, get more people in the field, support them, and provide them ongoing professional development so that if this happens again in the future, that they're well prepared and supported to do hybrid and online learning, and really to balance these expectations. And how do we change our systems so that we can transition easier in the future? And then we're also seeing really a growth of online learning, obviously, because we've had to do that as educators to protect the health and safety of our kids. But how can we hold on to some of that, knowing that so many of our learners, or some of our learners, really thrived in that virtual environment? How do we keep those kids connected? And certainly the last piece is, how do we focus on the most essential knowledge and skills that our students need, which is where our educators have gone, is, okay, now that I'm in this hybrid environment or seeing my kids a little bit less, what's the most important aspects of the curriculum that I support them with? And how can I assess them appropriately and meet them where they're at and help support them to the next level specifically? So I'm really happy that conversation is happening, although it's happening in a very stressful, obviously, pandemic time, but one that we should kind of keep talking about, I think, across the state on what we can do to really carve out the most essential skills and knowledge, and focus a little bit less on the delivery system and more on essentially what they need to know and be able to do from our supportive educators across the field. So I know you're running a little short on time, so wanted to provide, these are some of the staff members that you'll see connected to this committee and our resources all throughout the session in different parts of our work, and wanted to provide some indicators and some links specifically to some of our reports, which might be useful for you with different discussions about some of these important topics with bills over the next couple of months. So I want to turn it over back to you, Senator Daughtry, for any questions that might be appropriate for me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Judd. Do you have any questions from the committee? Senator Whitson.
Yes, thank you. How does Educate Maine, and specifically Maine Spark, how do you reach out to the institutions and the students? I mean, are you statewide? How does this work?
Great. Thank you for mentioning the Maine Spark piece, because we're really proud of that work. The good news is with Maine Spark, it's a coalition of organizations, over 100, that are working on increasing educational attainment. And each one of the higher education institutions is at that table, attending those meetings and helping with both the strategy, the event planning, as well as the outreach. I think you've heard a bit about the campaign with the Finance Authority of Maine and the University of Maine system, specifically to try to provide more events over the next couple of months directly to reach high school students, to help them with their college application process, their financial aid process. And both FAME and the University of Maine system are two active Maine Spark partners. So we use the coalition to help shine a light and really communicate in all 16 counties programs like that to be able to work. So there's statewide organizations that are a part, but there's also very local organizations and systems that are a part, and everybody can be at the table. You just have to believe that in the goal of 60% by 2025, education will help improve the economy and help the people of Maine. And then we'll invite you to the table for the conversation. So
great, good information. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Real quick before we jump to the next question, I just wanted to give Representative Salisbury a chance to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I am Representative Sue Salisbury, and I represent House District 35, which is part of Westbrook, and just returned from getting my 83-year-old mom her first COVID vaccine. Yay. Martin's Point, that was amazing. Perfect process. And thank you. I'm sorry. I'm happy that I have all the presentation information and look forward to looking over all that. Thank you.
Congratulations to your mom. That's great news. And welcome back. Representative McCray.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Judd, for being here. A quick comment, looking at the length and breadth of the things that you people do, if you didn't have a name for your organization, it should be Educate Maine. Okay. Anyway, my question is, we've done yeoman's work over the last 3 or 4 years of moving the credentialing up the line, up in an upward direction. And do you see the pandemic as being maybe more inspiration for people to get these credentials, or is it more of a hindrance?
I think we're really anxious to look at some specific data for Maine to really have a better sense of that. The early indications are we didn't necessarily see, like with the last recession, we saw everybody kind of go into higher ed kind of right after that last recession back in 2008. We didn't see that huge move as a result of this pandemic. The circumstances were just different. Families were in a different spot financially, balancing work and supporting their children to be able to attend pre-K through 12 schools. I think if we do some things right here over the next year or two collectively, I think we will see, I think the pandemic can be a significant driver into credentialing, because we see particular industries that were hardest hit by the pandemic, those workers seeing the value of education and short-term training and degree attainment as a way to provide them maybe greater stability and help them pursue some aspirations that they have specifically. So I think the work of the Economic Recovery Committee and some of the recommendations of that group spoke to that, and some of the investments Governor Mills has championed speak to sort of how do we take workers that maybe don't have a credential of value and were really hurt through this pandemic and connect them with short-term and long-term training programs to get them higher waged opportunities to provide stability specifically. So Maine Spark, as what, in conversations with our different representatives that represent, different government branches, have been working really hard to do that. Because not only is it right for Maine people, but in order to meet our goal over time, we've got to make sure we're continuing to make steady progress despite the fiscal realities. Because the barriers on the other side are that, adult learners still have childcare challenges. They have broadband challenges, they're not only trying to go to school and be successful and thrive and get good grades, but they've also got all of these other barriers that are kind of trying to take them away from high quality education, in terms of at the college level. So it's kind of a monumental task that we need to work on, but one that's really important. If we do it right, we'll see huge gains in credentialing over these next couple of years to both meet our goal, but then more importantly, increase the training and wages of the people of Maine.
Thank you very much.
You, Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much, Mr. Judd, for being here. Just a couple of comments and then a question, I hope. First of all, education in general has sometimes fallen short about blowing our own horns successfully out in the wider world. So I would ask specifically in the future if you can help keep us up to date on the efforts that you are employing to do that. The other thing is, I just want to thank you for the partnership that you represent with the business community. We ever so much need that input. And I hope that if there are things that we can do as a committee to help strengthen those connections and move forward, please don't hesitate to come before this committee and reach out and say, hey, we could use your help in these specific ways. Thank you.
Happy to, thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Judd, and thank you for your time. It's always a pleasure to hear from Educate Maine, and thank you for all of the work you do, and especially your very helpful reports. And Yeah, good reminder from everyone to go, what, 5 p.m. for the deadline for Teacher of the Year nominations?
5 p.m. So please nominate. We're trying to make sure this is the year of the educator and have our nominations reflect that.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Up next with time, we're going to switch things around a little bit. We're going to go to Tara Williams with the Maine Association. Sorry, totally just massacred that name. Maine Association for the Education of Young Children. And good morning, Ms. Williams. Thanks for joining us. Oh, I think you're on mute. Now you're good.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, wonderful. Good morning to Senator Daughtry, Representative Brennan, and the Committee on Education and Cultural Affairs. I'm going to just quickly rename myself since that is not my name, that's my organization. My name is Tara Williams. I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Association for the Education of Young Children, also sometimes called Maine AEYC. I'm not going to pull up the slideshow I made. It wasn't long anyway. I think I'd rather just talk to you a little bit. I am a early childhood educator by training. So my career started in the classroom. I've worked in public school, elementary school, as well as a child care center. So I've worked with kids all the way from infants and toddlers up to teaching 3rd grade, including my quite hectic first year where I taught a combined 2nd and 3rd grade classroom. And that was an adventure as a first-year teacher. So I started as the executive director of Maine AEYC in 2017. And we're a nonprofit here in Maine that's both a state, we're an affiliate of a national organization, NAEYC. We're also a membership organization. And one thing to point out there is that often membership associations are by role, so you're a teacher or a principal or a superintendent. Ours is actually by developmental area, by the children you serve. So our members work with or care for children from infants up through 3rd graders. So some of them are working in childcare, some are in elementary schools, and they're both the staff and teachers and also administrators and directors. And then in addition, we actually have some higher ed faculty who train early childhood teachers who are members of our association as well. We do a lot of partnering with other nonprofits in the state. We've built relationships over the years with the Family Child Care Association of Maine, with Head Start directors, with some others I'm sure you've heard from over the last week, like the Maine Education Association and principals and Maine School Management. And we really try to focus on how we can help build bridges in this world of birth to 3rd grade that often gets so siloed and split up. You may have heard, for those of you who I may have spoken to before, you may have heard of a couple of the things we do, like helping to host a large statewide early childhood conference. We do a policy leadership program for educators, but one thing that is new since last session is that we also now run a scholarship program called Teach Early Childhood Maine, which is funded by the Office of Child and Family Services and comes through the Child Care and Development Block Grant that we get federally in Maine. And so this has been a really wonderful thing to add to the supports that are available for teachers who want to get early childhood degrees in Maine, because they can join this scholarship program and get their associates or bachelors with a debt-free education, not only covering tuition, but also mileage, travel reimbursements, books, as well as release time from where they're teaching to be able to complete those courses. But what I'm really here to talk to you about today is COVID-19 and the impact on childcare. So when I start talking about that, I do want to say, just to kind of ground us all in the same place, because there are so many words used to describe this sector. Whether you hear people say daycare, childcare, early care and education, that's what I'm talking about, all of that. So we're talking about the programs that are at YMCAs, Head Starts, home-based family childcare, and centers, both small and large. COVID-19 has had a big impact. It's been a very difficult year, I'm sure, for all of you, and we hear it cross-sector across Maine. Specifics to childcare are, I would say that the two words that stand out to me are instability and uncertainty. And there's a few areas where I want to highlight what that means within childcare. One is that for directors or owners or those who run programs, many of them have had to make difficult decisions based on their own health. So for example, if you're a family childcare provider who runs this program out of your home and you have someone immunocompromised in your house, then many of those have either chosen to limit the number of children, close temporarily or permanently, or have to figure out other systems to put in place, hire out a new teacher, spend more of the time in another part of their home. We have folks who last spring had to make really difficult kind of individualized decisions based on whether to stay open or closed. And I think it's interesting. There's been a lot more discussion in the field about wanting to become more of a system. I know there's some pride within folks about running their own small business, having their own childcare, but I think this really highlighted for everyone what it means to not be part of an aligned system like K-12, where there's clear hierarchical decisions and supports that come to the system. And back in spring, that left a lot of folks really grappling with, should I stay open or close? What does this mean for my families? And then with those who wanted to stay open, and many have and have done well, the instability among teachers and staff has been, oh my gosh, almost insurmountable. I know some of you have heard from before COVID-19 about, trying to recruit and retain early childhood educators. Well, not only have many left because of the many women who've left the workforce overall anyway, but many have left just because it not only became, as I think you heard Jason saying with Educate Maine, a really difficult job this year, but we're also talking about within childcare, one that's significantly underpaid and many without benefits. So to stay in a job that was seemingly becoming higher risk and harder without healthcare and low wages for many was too much and was what had them leaving. The back to school year affected that as well. Unfortunately, so many women who work in public schools and in childcare have children either in public schools or childcare as well. And so, for example, there was one center I talked to in Scarborough. She lost 4 teachers in August this past year when they found out some of their kids wouldn't be going back full time to school because they couldn't go back to work. And then family instability. This has been a really interesting thing. I really wanted to be able to bring you a great chart and graph on how many families are, choosing childcare throughout the year. It keeps changing and it changes county to county. I think it's what we probably have all experienced. So back in the spring when it was, what is this new virus and is it safe for my children to be in group care? There was a lot of people just pulling their kids out of childcare or pulling them out of a center, but trying to get them into a smaller family childcare. But then as summer came and we can be outside, more of them were trying to access it. And then as fall came, we had some not, but that is even oversimplifying it. So if you want to know what's happening, the best thing is probably to reach out to some of the childcare programs in your own district, because each has a unique story about their, some have waiting lists and can't fill the seats in their program because they don't have enough teachers. Some wish they had more children coming and they have multiple open slots, but families are keeping kids at home. So it's kind of like, I can't tell you the story of childcare unless you talk to more childcare, because it's just so different right now all over the state. A couple of quick points. I want to be mindful of time because I know we're over your 12 o'clock and you've had a long day, I'm sure, but a lot of the relief funding that's come through has been asking people to put information in about their increased costs. And while that is a part of what's happened to childcare, if you ask any of them what the biggest financial challenge has been this year, it's not the increased cost, it's their lost revenue. It's the fact that they may be open, but if they normally had 30 children, they have 20. And so to try to stay open when you're operating at a loss month after month is extremely difficult. It's caused, raising tuition, furloughing teachers. The other thing that's important to know is when accessing financial support, I think there's been some confusion about just how much people are accessing. So for example, you might hear, well, they got Child Care Development Block Relief Funds and a PPP loan and maybe another one. For some programs, all of that relief added up to less than 1 month's loss. So they still could stay open, but but many are still in debt or still operating at a loss. And when it comes to accessing support, I'll tell you the best one has been when the federal government sent funds through the Child Care Development Block Grant, and our Office of Child and Family Services could distribute that. Almost 100%, I think it was 98% of programs in Maine got those relief funds. But when it came to other programs, it was more difficult to access. So only 30% of the childcare programs in Maine accessed PPP. And the thing about that too, when we're thinking about the financial impact, again, sometimes it's getting those individual stories. I did send along a resource from NAEYC of a survey that they did, and some of the stories of how they're managing are truly heartbreaking. You know, looking at how many tried to meet the financial struggle by dipping into their own personal savings accounts, or, you know, putting things on their own credit cards and running up personal debt because they want to serve their community and stay open for families. There's also some just sad things about the way programs have had to close. And when I say that, I just want to say, when you want to get good data on how many programs have stayed open or closed, licensing and OCFS is your greatest resource. I'm not going to be able to give you all that data. And there's a great dashboard on the OCFS website to be able to look that up. But I just want to highlight lastly, a couple things behind the numbers. So when you see how many programs are open, it's important to look further into what is their current capacity, or how many are they serving. So we might have 90% of programs in Maine open, but I sent along a survey we did last summer. And at that time, about the average program in Maine had about 65% of the kids that they usually have. So we need to kind of look beyond who's open to say, well, who's fully staffed? Who's got all their children in the door? And then when we look at who's closed, so when you look at this data dashboard, you'll see, for example, that with centers, we went from having 828 centers last February and March in Maine to 796. So that's not huge. That's a 4% loss. You know, that's a little over 30 programs. But sometimes we need to dig a bit deeper to see, you know, which county was it in? How many seats did that center have? Did we lose one of the centers that had 80 or 100 slots for kids? Within family childcare, we lost about 8%. So we went from 908 family childcare programs last winter to 834 now. And that's a place where I'd love to have us all dig deeper into that as well, because a loss of a family childcare program in some communities, even though it might only be 6 slots, can sometimes be the only one in the town, or the only one that's serving second shift workers, or is open early enough for those who work in the local grocery store. So I think it's great also if you're connecting with any ones in your community to see in your own district who is closed and how that might have impacted employers and your own community. So I'm just about ready to take questions, but I want to end on a positive note. I recently heard from a variety of childcare programs that one of the great positives that they've found is so many of them are doing more outdoor learning. And they've also many of them have changed their days to have less routines and longer periods of learning through play. And I've been hearing from several directors that they're having less challenging behaviors, more engaged children, and just really finding that they're getting to the heart of how children learn and what brings children joy, while trying to focus on that in the pandemic. And my highlight and my silver lining out of this pandemic is when we look in our community and say, what in our community provides education for children, care for families, it's a public good, it's essential, and it's an integral part of where we live. I think before COVID, we definitely would have said our public schools, and we still should, that's so important. But post-COVID, we'd say childcare and our public schools. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Ms. Williams. And thank you for all those important reminders. Do I have any questions from the committee? Representative Stearns.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Williams, I want to thank you. I just feel that was a fantastic presentation for us this morning. I want to pick up on one piece that you said. You said the women involved in public education and childcare, and I just would toss that up as a jump ball for everybody. that, wow, we could have a whole other conversation about that, about where are our young men in working with children in the public setting, but that's a whole other dynamic. I do have a specific question for you. Have you, as a former school person, I've watched hybrid models seem to take place around the state where for some reason on Monday it was safe for students to go to school, but on Tuesday it wasn't. And yet I thought to myself, well, they're going somewhere. They're likely going to childcare that's highly organized, or in some rural or any settings, childcare that is not highly organized, and in my opinion, perhaps not as safe as being at the public school, even though they might be a bit closer together. Have you run into, I'm sure you have, because you mentioned many of the dynamics, but
I mean, even for me personally, my second grader is going Mondays and Tuesdays to elementary school, and Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, he's at a family childcare program as one of the school age kids there. And I think that is important to remember when we're talking about hybrid models and part day programs in our public schools. Is a lot of the workforce of early childhood educators, if you're wondering where the kids are, that's where a lot of them are on the other days. They're in YMCAs, they're in family childcare homes. And then, of course, as many of you have probably heard in your own towns, there is a wide informal network of parents creating pods and nanny shares and piecing together ways to do it. And I won't go into it too much, but just to say, it is going to be a really important, when we can do this safely, a step to get especially our youngest kids back full-time in school. I've been really heartened to see a couple of our districts look at ways to be really creative, where they may still have their middle or high school doing hybrid, but they get those young elementary kids in. Because when we look at child development and how young children learn, kindergarten, first and second graders do not learn effectively over technology. And it just breaks my heart to see how hard our public school teachers are working. My son's teacher is amazing. The content they're putting together on all of these platforms, and the young ones who really, they don't access it or learn that way. And generally who they're learning from right now is whoever they're with. So whoever they're with on their unhybrid, non-in-school days is really in more of the role of teacher this year.
thank you so much for that. And if I may, Madam Chair, just a real quick follow-up. Thank you. It even reached a point where I may be way off base, but I was reading about schools that, recognizing the need for childcare, would have school on one day, and then the school would use some of their relief monies to provide childcare on the next day. And as an old frugal Mainer sitting up in the woods, I thought, well, why don't, while they have them there, put a teacher in there and we'll call that school? It seems to have been that bizarre to me that how our little folks particularly have been pulled about. But again, thank you so much for your
Sure. Yes, you're welcome. I hear you. It is complicated and complex, and I know every community is trying to do their best. I'll put a quick plug in that the relief funds that are coming to public schools now, they can use those to help support families with childcare. They can continue to do that.
Thank you. Representative Brennan, followed by Representative Dodge.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you, Ms. Williams, for being here. And I guess you just got an A+ in your presentation from Representative Stearns. He, as a former school superintendent, he tends to grade things pretty harshly. So you did pretty well. I had a very quick question. Do you know the percentage or, the percentage or number of childcare programs that also offer a kindergarten program? So for example, in Portland, St. Elizabeth Child Care Center provides childcare, but they also provide a certified kindergarten program.
I don't know how many. I do know just anecdotally from some of our members that some that didn't offer it added that in this year. There's one particular in Bangor where the director actually stepped down from full-time director to part-time teach the kindergarten that they opened in their childcare center. So some responded to family needs that way. And you may have already heard this in previous presentations, but I know we're kind of all looking at these numbers expecting quite a big bubble this coming fall in kindergarten because of the number of parents who could have put their kids in kindergarten this year but kept them home. And I think we're going to have this kind of bubble grade for several years in Maine, because we found in our pre-K programs, more of them saw parents asking to keep their kids in for an extra year of preschool.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Ms. Williams, for being here. Again, a former teacher. Wait, I'm still a teacher, but retired, A+. I am heartened to hear that some of these various providers are hoping for some kind of alignment and coordination within the system. I am guessing much of that will fall to your organization. I hope that there will be some cross-pollination to the greatest extent possible. That's number one. And number two, I would encourage some sort of fostering of communication with the business communities by those local entities. We have a specific situation, which I'm sure is not uncommon across the state, of businesses who turn to area childcares and say, you need to help us because our business is in dire straits. So again, that cross-pollination and collaboration and communication, and let us know how we can be helpful to make sure that that happens for the best things for our kids. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Senator Woodson. Senator Woodson, you're on mute.
Okay, I think I've got it. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. This may be a question for you or the Department of Education. I know a lot of the nonprofits in my area, especially the YMCA, did a heroic effort in trying to provide childcare during this COVID. I mean, they had to meet all the state guidelines, et cetera, but I don't think they receive or are eligible for any funding to help provide this childcare. Is that true? Is that how it's set up?
It depends on which YMCA. So some of the school districts applied for a specific set of relief funds that would help pay for those partnerships. I know, and excuse me that I'm not recalling your district right now, but the Bangor area was one of the largest ones. So that Y is partnering, I think, with 12 different school districts.
Mm-hmm.
But no, they didn't necessarily. Actually, one of my kids was attending the Y in Freeport, and that's being funded by parents paying. For many of us with elementary school kids, we did not know we were going to be paying for childcare. This year, it's quite a surprise after we thought we were done with that for several years of our lives. But that is what parents who are able to are generally doing right now.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at the benefit one. It's not my district, but next door. But I think it's in the same district, YMCA wise, as Freeport.
And sometimes what you find, especially in the more populated areas of the state, like the Portland area, is it depends on where you live. So for example, I'm in Cumberland. My son is attending a program in Portland on his non-hybrid days. We were told if we lived in Portland, that could have been paid for because the Portland Public Schools are using relief funds to support childcare for families, but because our district wasn't, that's on the families. So it kind of varies town to town and place to place. We would love to see more of these formal partnerships spring up, even if it's for the last 4 months of the school year, because I think, many of us at a policy level and talking to state leaders understood that this would be a whole school year, but I don't know if all families really understood they were going to have to make these arrangements and pay these extra costs for a whole school year.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Representative Brennan?
Yes, just in response to Senator Woodson's question, I believe close to $25 million of federal money that was set aside statewide for school districts, but they had to apply to the Department of Education with a plan for how they were going to provide the childcare. And as Ms. Williams pointed out, so for example, in Portland, they applied and they partnered with local childcare organizations to provide that childcare for within the school district in the city of Portland. So there are probably a lot of school districts across the state that did not apply and didn't have those type of programs available.
Yes, it was very good intentions, but it was just unfortunate timing. That application period, you can imagine for school districts, it was end of August, early September, as they were all trying to open in a pandemic. So just there was a lot less applied than was expected. And unfortunately, not all those funds were spent on that for that purpose because they didn't get as many applications as they thought. But the new funds coming to schools from the December relief funds can be spent on that.
Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our problem at our local Y was the number of scholarship recipients who were already being cared for, and the expansion of the program didn't truly allow for an expansion of care that was able to be delivered.
That makes sense.
Any further questions from the committee? Seeing none, I want to thank you for your time, Ms. Williams, and thank you for this very important and very thoughtful presentation. And thank you for everything that you are doing. Up next, we do have the Maine Development Foundation. Before we get there, I'm starting to see the Zoom fatigue. So if everyone could just like move your arms around a little bit, stretch a little bit, stand up if you can. I'm starting to see the eyes, moving around. So make sure you move, even if it's just spinning around in your chair. You need to turn off your video for a second and do a couple jumping jacks. Representative Stearns, you're excused. You got the hands going. But with that, we have the Maine Development Foundation joining us. And Mr. Breen, feel free to take it away as the rest of us are trying to stretch and keep the blood flowing. Stretch a little bit, stand up if you can. Starting to see the eyes, moving around. So make sure you move. Oh, and make sure you have the YouTube off when you jump in on the Zoom is my other pro tip.
Yes, I just had to do that. Thank you so much, Senator Daughtry. We know it's been a long day, so if you need us to cut it short and come back another day, to follow up, we'll be happy to do whatever works for the committee. My name is Yellow Breen. I'm the CEO of Maine Development Foundation, and I'll be joined today by two great colleagues, Jan Kierce, who heads our education and workforce and leadership development areas, and Erica Watson, who joined us last fall, who has just a tremendous wealth of experience working with adult learners on so many different levels in Maine. And I'll open up a brief PowerPoint in a second. I just wanted to say that I think the last time I spent much time in this committee was 20 years ago, and Representative Brennan was the co-chair then. So you just can't keep us away, right, Mike? So we appreciate the opportunity to be here. You heard a lot from Jason Judd. We are a core partner in Maine Spark, and so some of my slides I'll skip because Jason really already did them justice. A lot of what you'll hear about MDF and our work is in many ways similar to Educate Maine because we share common DNA. Educate Maine is actually the result of a couple of spin-offs from MDF 30 and 20 years ago that became Educate Maine. And we similarly work a lot with data. We similarly work cross-sector and try to move big picture issues forward, but we focus on the Maine economy. So let me see if I can get the PowerPoint teed up here. Is that working for everybody?
Yep.
Excellent. So a lot of you know MDF, but for those of you who don't, we work on long-term economic prosperity for Maine. We are legislatively chartered to do that in a nonpartisan way, but our membership and our board is elected from across the different sectors in Maine, and two ex officio members of the governor's cabinet. So a true public-private partnership galvanized by this vision to pursue a high quality of life for all Maine people through sustainable long-term economic growth. We host a lot of programs. We'll only touch on 2 or 3 of these today. One that a lot of you have seen is Measures of Growth. We staff the Economic Growth Council in putting out that long-term benchmarking around the Maine economy, a balanced scorecard, 29 indicators across a host of areas, a bunch of which touches on talent, education, and workforce, but also, of course, covers all the other facets of the Maine economy. So I won't get too deep into that. Many of you have participated already in our Policy Leaders Academy educational offerings over the past couple of months. We just wrapped our last one this morning. And then, as we said, one of our core partnerships is Maine Spark. and in particular, the work with adult learners. The exchange that you had with Jason and just now with Tara Williams hits on a lot of the issues that we can provide some additional data and some additional frontline insights on. So in terms of measures of growth, just a few quick things, and we sent through Sam some additional background, and you should have received measures of growth in the mail at your home in late December as well. But Maine, tends to lag in terms of wages, and in turn, we lag a lot of our national and regional comparisons in terms of value added per worker, which is just simply taking all the goods and services produced in Maine divided by the number of people in our workforce. And Maine is the bottom dark dotted line on this graphic. So we know that education is a huge part of having the workforce that can drive that number up, so we can drive wages and household well-being up. And so when you look at educational attainment, which has been in measures of growth for the last 26 years, you can see that we actually track the nation fairly closely over the long haul, but we lag New England as a whole. This particular portrait is degrees only, and it's been historically extremely hard to give you data on anything except degrees. But now, as Jason said, as we move to this vision with Maine Spark for 60%, that vision from the beginning was always supposed to include non-degree credentials, industry certifications, accreditations that can be tracked and that have real economic value to the earner of that credential, even if it's not a full-fledged degree. And as Jason covered earlier, what's been exciting is more and more work is constantly being done to try to track the non-degree component. We know that we've increased degrees from the low to mid 30s a decade ago to about 42, 43% today on the degree side. And now we're estimating that about 8% of Mainers have those other kinds of credentials. And that's helping us figure out what is our remaining gap to goal. We'd like to get about 10% of Mainers with those additional credentials. If you take 700,000 Mainers in the workforce times 10%, that still leaves us about 70,000 Mainers in the existing workforce that we're trying to reach over time with this effort to upskill them and enable them to open up additional opportunities for themselves. And so, as I said, within the overall constellation of Maine Spark, which has 4 tracks running all the way from early childhood through attracting and retaining talent in the state or from out of state that already has credentials, we are the lead and the project manager on the Adult Promise project for adult learners, working with so many others, as Jan will describe. So how does what's going on in the broader economy feed into what we're trying to do with adult learners? Well, no surprise to all of you, we fell off the cliff in terms of employment and jobs. The purplish line at the bottom kind of shows that effect when we had to shut down. And then as we've kind of gradually tried to claw our way back, but it hasn't been the same across the Maine economy. In some parts of the economy, leisure and hospitality, obviously super hard hit, obviously super constrained by safety and health, and wasn't able to come all the way back. And indeed, the high point was kind of what we usually see in the ebb of the off season for that industry. So a long road to go. But look at construction. Temporary blip during the shutdown, and then that purple line actually shoots to the top of the chart. And we never see this in a recession in Maine, off the charts on things like home sales, building supplies, and construction. So what you guys are probably hearing back home and in this committee in terms of simultaneously having a huge degree of underemployment at the same time that you still have a skills gap, this kind of disparity between sectors is part of the reason why both can be true at the same time. And it hasn't affected all households equally. The red line at the top, high income households, not only not suffering as much as the recovery began this fall, but actually growing in Maine, and low income households still off the charts in terms of negative opportunities for employment. And when you tie educational attainment levels to this, it tracks almost perfectly. So high wage, high education, or high technically skilled workers doing pretty well in this recession, and frontline, lower income, lower educated workers not. So it's no surprise, therefore, that what we're going to talk to you about today in terms of a focus on adult learners in the workforce is front and center in the economic recovery strategies that came out from the Governor's Economic Recovery Committee at the end of November. So when you go into the talent section of that recovery strategy, bullet number 1 is about reaching working adults with affordable and accessible opportunities. And that's exactly what the Adult Promise track of Maine Spark, hosted here at MDF, has been working on. Clearly the mission and the needs have evolved. Some have been magnified, some are different. And Jan and Erica are going to talk about how we do the work and how we've been forced to adjust the work. So Jan.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this time with you, Senator Daughtry, Representative Brennan, and the whole committee. You've been listening intently and asking good questions all day, because I've been here all day listening. So thank you for the time and attention that you're giving to these matters. Yes, we are focused on Adult Promise as project managers here at MDF. And when we say adults, we do think 18-year-olds are adults. However, we're focusing on those folks who are 25 plus when we think about this population. We don't do it alone. We are managing process. Next slide, Yellow. And some of these folks you've already heard from. It's really important. And one of the things we recognized early on is that we weren't talking to each other. We didn't all know who was doing what and how to best serve this audience or this population. So a very, very early strategy was bringing people together to the same table and helping and bringing them together to the same table. And we, some of these folks you've already heard from, the University of Maine system, the Maine Community College system, Educate Maine, you just heard from, but we also have the privates, the Department of Labor, Department of Adult Education, et cetera. So we're all at that same table on a regular basis, talking about and sharing what we're doing. It is not an easy job, because these are the kinds of things that we need to be doing for adults. We can't just put an ad in the newspaper and find adults and they come in the door and they sign up. Adults come in with quite a lot of need as it relates to even figuring out what they want to do. There are some people who come in with a little bit of college, some with none. They don't know where to start. They don't know what jobs are available. They don't know what good jobs are available. And then you add up all these things that you see on the slide, which start even from transportation to funding to scholarships to somebody to be a coach. And it's very complex. And the institutions are doing their best at that. And we also have another strategy around that we'll talk about. And this has gotten worse with COVID, and we'll talk about that more as well. So one of the things that we are trying to do is, one, tell adults in Maine that there are jobs. There are good jobs. There are programs. They're not all degree programs. Some of them are credential, but they can do what they want to do. These are actually Mainers in this slide, one of whom decided he wanted to be a chef at the age of 52. And by gosh, that's what he did. I hope he's doing okay now, given what's happened in hospitality. But they all are Mainers, and they're from across the whole state. We want to tell their story and help people to feel more inspired to come back to school or go back to school, because it's not easy. Go ahead, Yellow. So what are we doing? We're advertising to these adults. We're bringing them into a website that gives them access to information. But we also know that a lot of adults aren't really comfortable with technology. They need to be, they will be over time, but how do we help to move them along with a more personal touch? So one of the things that we focus on when people come to this hub is immediately connecting them, Yellow, to the Maine Spark Navigator Network. These are agnostic navigators in a way. They work for all of those institutions that we just described, and we're growing that group. So we had 384 today, we're growing it to 500. And those navigators serve the purpose of creating essentially no wrong door. So you go to you can go to a navigator in Presque Isle or in Lewiston or in Portland or other places, and those navigators are learning more about not only their own institutions, but and what the financial aid is and so on there, but how do we support these learners who are having such struggles? And some of them are with childcare, like we were hearing about a few minutes ago. That's one of the biggest issues, and you'll hear more about that. But it's always a problem, not just COVID, it's just gotten worse. So these navigators are helping to make sure that those doors are open and that they're ready to help them. And then comes COVID. That's my sense of humor. It kind of bounced in. And I'm going to turn it over to Erica Watson to talk a little bit more about the the impact of COVID.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jan. I just want to take a few slides and look at some of the national data that we know about what's happening for our adult students related to COVID. So if I could have that first slide there.
Erica, can you give them a couple sentences on your background just so they know kind of where you come at this? I didn't really do that justice.
Sure. So I've worked with MDF since September, but prior to that, I've been working in higher education in Maine for just over 15 years. I've worked within the community college system, also the university system and a private college here in the state. So great. Some of the information I'm going to present in the next 3 slides are from Strata. They've been doing research from pre-COVID and stepped up their research during COVID to see what are aspiring adult learners saying about their COVID experience, and in this slide, what is making them more likely to enroll in education. So what we're seeing here is that adult aspiring students are 42% more likely to say that they are considering enrollment. 21% are less likely to enroll. Again, these are people who are currently not enrolled in education. But one of the things that we're seeing, and this is true in the state of Maine, is that confidence in the value of education has fallen among aspiring students. So in this graph here, in the first one on the left, you can see that there's less confidence that additional education will be worth the cost. So you can see 2019 versus 2020. That's a significant change in that confidence level. And then the second graph on the right-hand side, you can see that adults are wondering and asking if additional education will make them more attractive as a job candidate. So in 2019, 56% were saying yes, we feel like that will make us more attractive. And now 2020, there's been some more question of that, and only about 24% think that it will make them a good candidate so they'll be able to get a job. Since the onset of the pandemic, we've really seen a shift in how people are thinking about pursuing their education. So right now we're seeing that 63% of Americans are preferring a non-degree or skills training option. And I know that earlier, I think last week, you heard from the university system and the community college system about their credentialing programs and micro-credentials, and that would be fitting within this current preference of 63% of respondents in this survey. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of data to kind of think about. This is national data, however, it is holding true from what we're hearing from our Maine Spark navigators. And I'll take just a couple minutes right now to talk a little bit about some of the reasons that we're seeing enrollment declines, and in some schools application declines. I really want to stress that these declines are general to the adult population, but they are disproportionate for adult learners, in particular, people who might be low income and or people of color. And this is due to a variety of factors. Strata data also tells us that one of the significant reasons that adult learners are not, or aspiring adult learners are not sure if they should go into school is their own self-doubt. They wonder if they belong there. There's also uncertainty about the jobs of the future. As we've already heard, there's a lot of uncertainty around their own children's schedules right now. There's a lack of understanding of career pathways. And again, there's wavering confidence in the value of education. From our navigators, I've been listening to hearing what they're saying, working on the ground with adult students, and they're reporting to us that they're seeing a increase in pause. So students are, taking a pause in their studies, taking a semester or more off. They're seeing a decrease in credits taken per semester. They're seeing significant increases in stressors from having children home, remote learning changes, and daycare challenges. They're also seeing an increase in caregiving of other family members. And they're also, our navigators are reporting that students in some special populations are feeling particularly more isolated and an increased need for social and emotional supports. Students are also reporting a lack of available technology in terms of like broadband access, but very important digital literacy skills. On the positive, navigators have pivoted to use multiple modalities to work and connect with students. Student no-shows to appointments has dramatically decreased, which as a former advisor, that is huge, actually, because students have more ways, adult students have more ways to meet with their advisors and other people. Some adult students have been able to participate in student clubs and student governments more, again, due to that modality. And then personal touches, outreach to like adult students actually does help to decrease isolation. So navigators anticipate using some of these new programming skills that they've developed even after COVID. One other thing I did want to touch on is that, you know, we know from our own research that it takes about 14 outreach touches to influence an aspiring adult student to take the next steps towards earning a credential of value, and COVID has led to an increase in the required touch points to really get some of those adults kind of moving forward. So that's certainly taking more resources on our end. I think the last thing that I will leave you with is that we will continue to go forward in a very collaborative way. You've heard from Jason and many of our other partners, and it's really going to require everyone working together. Degree and non-degree pathways have a significant value, as does bridging the career pathways gap from a degree, from non-degree to degree. So no single entity or institution can really handle or mitigate all of these challenges alone.
Thanks, Erica. You can tell Erica is the true expert and has been involved in so many things, including College for Me, Androscoggin, and other regional efforts. And so she's been on the ground. I would just add, as we segue to questions, that we know in a resource constrained environment, we were able to build a lot of proof of concept with national philanthropy investment from Lumina. And we have been seeking, we were unsuccessful in some competitive CARES Act funding, but we're hoping to continue to seek some federal competitive grant support for this project and continue to work with Maine's private philanthropic community. Obviously, we hope to continue to be a strong partner with the state, but we know we've got to build, you know, a quiver of resources to keep this great work going, working with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that informative presentation. And for folks, if you haven't gotten your measures of growth report, I definitely got mine in December and have it right over here on my desk. Do I have any questions from the committee? I think MDF is, oh, wait, Senator Rafferty. Oh, Senator Rafferty, you're on mute.
I'm going to master this by about September, I think. Thank you, Madam Chair. In any case, and thank you both in terms of your presentations. The last point you made relative to the touch points, can you explain that a little bit more? And what are some of your, you know, what points, I guess, would be some of your more successful venues? Thank you.
Sure. So part of my background is actually in admissions work for colleges. So when we think of sort of touch points, it's kind of like a marketing concept in terms of how many places does it take for somebody to see, you know, see an idea. So how many ads do you see? How many mailings do you get? How many emails do you receive? How many places do you receive messages about, in this case, returning or going to school? So those touch points can come from Maine Spark. They can come from universities and colleges and other training programs. So they come in a variety of ways. And so when we think about the multiple touch points it takes, at least 14 to kind of get somebody moving forward. It kind of relates even to, like, if you go on and you look at LL Bean and you look at shoes, and then those shoes keep coming back in all these places on your electronic devices over and over again, those are touch points, if you will, in a sort of a marketing kind of way. And so for us, we think of them as like friendly encouragement to keep this dream alive. But that's kind of what I mean by touch points. And I think, you know, having a variety of those is important, but what I see as most successful is when they're hearing from other Mainers who have successfully completed programs or successfully navigating whatever trainings that they're doing. It doesn't have to be their direct neighbor, but somebody like them is what really, I think, drives the message home.
Just to add to that, there's a network across the country. There are talent hubs. There's a graduate network. And what also is coming out of those are studies which are saying that essentially adults need a friend as they go through the whole process. Get them in the door, but staying connected helps them to be, we use the word persistent, but now they're starting to use the word persevere, because adults sometimes do have to take stop outs in order to get their lives back together, take care of those childcare issues, and then go back. But that contact from someone in the institution is incredibly helpful.
Thank you. Representative Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mr. Breen, and your staff for being here. I don't know how many know much about Yellow's background, but he graduated #1 in his class from high school. He then went on to graduate #1 in his class from Harvard University. He then went on to graduate #1 in his class from Harvard Law School. And then he came back and became Associate Commissioner of the Department of Education. So we're really pleased to have you come back to the state and lend your many talents in many different ways. So I have one question. The graph that showed the clear relationship between educational attainment and income, is that also true, or is there a breakdown relative to a 4-year degree, a 2-year degree, and certificate? So I was kind of struck by when you were saying that people had lost confidence in education. And is that across the board, that they've lost confidence in a 4-year degree, a 2-year degree, certificates? And again, what is that relationship between having a 4-year degree versus certificate in terms of expected income?
Representative Brennan, you're way too kind and only half right, but about my resume, but I appreciate it. And we talked about this a lot earlier this week because we were struck by that seeming inconsistency, because we know that people with more education have higher job retention and indeed may have even grown their economic success in the middle of a recession. And yet we're seeing this perspective that the nascent student is not sure if the ROI is going to be there. And we're not sure if it reflects the underlying dynamics of uncertainty about the recovery, as opposed to what just happened to those who already had the credential. But Erica has been thinking through that with us too.
Thank you. Any more questions from the committee? Seeing none, I know how hard it is to be the last presentation going up against, lunchtime. And also we do have a little bit more work, but I want to thank you for this presentation. I'm sure it's just going to be the beginning of our work together. I don't know if you folks have anything else you'd like to add before we move on to our next agenda item.
We really appreciate the opportunity, and you know where we live if we can help in any way or deepen the conversation. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. Thank you all. And then committee, if we can also stay on, we do have language review for the supplemental. Okay, so we've got everyone. Before I have Ms. Rissler take it off, I just wanted to say a couple of things real quick, because I know we went through some our first committee road bumps on parliamentary procedure on Wednesday, and I just really want to thank everyone for helping us navigate back to that portion. And Ms. Rissler is sending out a couple of sort of reminders on what the purview of our report back is and what different policy committees do get to do on the budget and what's within our silo. Or our lane, I should say, and then also some really helpful handouts from NCSL, as well as procedure within committees. And I think it'll be very helpful. And just, I know all the committees, I've gotten to watch a few others, not to brag, but I think our committee's actually handling it the smoothest. But if anyone has any questions or if we're missing something, I know it's a new environment. So please, jump in, unmute if you have a question or you don't understand something or something needs clarification. So hopefully those handouts will be a good quick reference guide, and please let Representative Brennan and I know if you have any other questions. So that, Ms. Rissler, if you want to take it away.
All right, I was just sending that email, so it's pretty bare bones email. But in your inbox, you should have just received a quick FYI email, and it has a link, as Senator Daughtry said, to those NCSL parliamentary procedure nuts and bolts, and then also the committee rules with a couple pieces just highlighted, as well as the budget procedure, so you can see some of that information. But getting to the actual supplemental budget review, for anyone who is watching this from the public, the draft documents are posted to the committee webpage under the supplemental budget materials subpage. I did hear back from a couple members after I emailed this out late yesterday. Thank you. I did correct the typo that was caught by a couple people. So that's the easy one. However, I also received some additional comments on some of the language regarding the rainy day fund and the broadband mapping. And so I want to flag those for you and for discussion about whether you want to move forward with the language that was provided that I drafted for you, or whether you want to make some edits to that. I think the first comment with regards to the rainy day fund was from Representative Stearns, who just indicated that with the $45 million additional dollars proposed in the biennium and the $183 million in additional federal funding, that he felt that it is likely that the governor's recommendation is warranted. And Representative Stearns, you can obviously correct me if I said anything incorrectly.
No, I think that's accurate, and I think throwing in those couple of figures more accurately depicts the dissenting opinion, if you will, for the members that think that perhaps that 20 million, the 45 million is beyond the purview of this committee. I think that frames it a little bit better. I appreciate a possible adjustment there.
So unless there's any sort of objections with that, I can add that in just to clarify on that minority opinion paragraph.
Absolutely.
And then the other one is regarding the broadband mapping. I think, this was both from Wednesday as well as some feedback that whether or not this should be included in the report back at all, given that the initiative was not in front of the committee. And so I turn that over to discussion for the committee, whether you want to leave what I've drafted in here as is, or whether you do not want that as part of your report back.
I wonder if there's a way, and I'm sorry to, ask you to do a little bit more drafting on this, but instead of, we could mention the mapping, but I think it's better to say that the committee recognizes that for our schools to be successful, we need to have access to broadband. And we just urge the appropriations committee to really, make that one of their priorities, since it benefits not only our committee's purview, but so many others. I'd be curious to hear what other folks think of that. Something just a general, this is something we need for our schools to succeed. Representative Stearns?
Yes, thanks, Senator. I concur with that, and that has been, the broadband piece has been so important through this entire COVID experience that one of the best things about COVID, if you will, is it has exposed our weakness in broadband, and that, in my opinion, involves every single community and every single committee that we're dealing with. So maybe perhaps even a separate letter off, or however you'd like to do it. But rather than say this was an added initiative to the supplemental, a broad note, and again, even a regular letter that the Ed Committee stands ready to assist in any possible way. We have good data through the Education Department. They're collecting data. Any way that we can help any other committees with broadband information, we stand ready to do it. I'm babbling now, as usual. But.
No, you're just preaching to the choir. I would say my 2 cents worth is I don't think there isn't any reason we can't put, we say in the memo, basically what you just said, and send a letter. I'm a big fan of repetitive, making our point over and over and over again. That's how things get done.
I call that the belt and suspender approach.
I like that. Representative McRae.
Yeah, seeing as I was the person that put that original motion in and then immediately lost my internet, I think that Representative Stern's approach is good. I think that the belt and suspenders and any other way is a good approach. This is going to come at appropriation probably from 10 different directions. Yeah. And I think we would be remiss if we weren't one of the lead groups or committees to promote this or to keep it visible. Thank you.
Agreed. Absolutely. Any other thoughts on that portion?
So because you're probably not going to get to see this again before it gets submitted based on the timing, I just want to make sure that I have it really, really clear. It sounds to me like what I will do is sort of remove that broadband paragraph, not reference any specific initiative, but include a sentence probably up in maybe the third or fourth sort of intro paragraphs that the committee recognized the importance of broadband to support Maine students and educators. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, this is just a stylistic thing. Like on the letter where we have the bolded initiatives, I do like having it put in bold, just, if someone's just very quickly scanning it, just to make sure they cannot miss it. And it can still just be, the sentence you described. But.
Sure, yeah. So I can actually leave broadband where it is, maybe take out the mapping because that was sort of specific to the initiative, but just broadband and then just a sentence that, as I just read it. Does that sound right?
Senator Woodson?
Yeah, just so I'm clear. So this is not directly addressing the rainy day fund, the $40 million that was discussed yesterday. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, this is more of a statement from all of us saying we're not referencing the rainy day fund. We're not referencing, any item particularly, but what we're saying is, here's what we're doing on the supplemental, but we are going to keep, basically it's us saying we're going to keep bringing up broadband to the Appropriations Committee and anyone who will listen, since it's pivotal to the success of our schools.
Yeah, and I think it's critical as committee members that we take that message back to our caucuses. That's where it needs to be addressed.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Representative Brennan. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, the thought around this, or this was identified by Commissioner Johnson when she became before the committee. And I specifically asked the question, could she tell us a little bit more where we stood as a state in terms of connectivity and education program? Because we know that the Department of Education has done a considerable amount over the last 6 to 8 months to try to make sure that there's broadband available. And she simply said, look, I don't know. We don't know yet. And then when she mentioned the fact that there was this request for money to support mapping and look around the state to determine where there were problems with infrastructure. So that's where the recommendation came from. And it's not adding or subtracting anything within the supplemental budget. It's just affirming the fact that if in fact the Appropriations Committee sees fit to support the mapping, it would be tremendously beneficial to us to then understand where we have these gaps in access to broadband across the state.
Absolutely, and thanks for the important reminder. I think Actually, Representative Dodge, I'll let you jump in.
No, I don't mean to interrupt. Please continue your thought.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think that's a good reminder. And I don't know, outside of this work, this is just a supplemental budget. I'm sure we'll probably want to mention it again when we're dealing with the biennium. And Ms. Rissler, or if anyone has any other ideas how we can use our voices to just sort of shore up everything that Commissioner Johnson said and that we've heard from almost every single group, I think, that's done an orientation with us has brought up broadband, including me being late this morning. So I think it's just something we should, every single time we get a chance, bring out the belt, suspenders, and bow tie too. Representative Dodge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My comment was around the broadband survey and how we perhaps as a caucus could help focus and communicate the shortages that exist. What I'm finding is things, again, have been put in these neat compartments. Our school system is experiencing these shortages and they're in their own little compartment. The town leaders, so I wonder if state and local may not play a part in addressing the shortages. Some of our local town mothers and fathers are collecting the data, but they don't seem to know exactly what to do with it for that ultimate work towards a solution. So I hope that's something we can maybe talk about town, education, business, that all need to be communicating in a way that those tabulations can be accurate and efficient. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I think that's a lot of the work that Peggy Schaefer is doing through the Connect Maine Authority. And I think it is, it's an all hands on deck effort. That's for sure. Representative Crockett and then Senator Rafferty.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I certainly don't want to open up another can of worms.
Uh-oh.
Yet, with respect to the program for substitute teachers and staff that Hillary beautifully wrote up, I got an email this morning from MEA talking how about the governor of Connecticut has extended the executive order for paid leave provision for school employees. Now that, of course, is an option for our governor to do as well. And it might end up being, the quickest thing for her to do. We don't have any mention of that as a solution in this information. So I just throw it out there. Is that something we may want to consider, revisit before we submit this?
I would just add my 2 cents, and feel free others to chip in if you feel otherwise, especially since that would be coming from an executive action. I wouldn't want to mess that up with, or mix that up with the report back to the Appropriations Committee. I think that's something we could probably discuss maybe next week about potentially if we'd be interested in sending a letter to the chief executive and saying, we've heard about this from different angles. We've noticed that Connecticut's doing this. Just, please do whatever you can to look up for our teachers. But I don't think necessarily the best fit for it, because we already have that portion that you mentioned that we took a vote on. But I think that would be something we could do in addition, but separately from the appropriations report back, if that makes any sense. Anyone have a thought on that before I jump to Senator Rafferty? Representative Stearns, did you have if you're hearing a weird groaning noise, that's the hound dog again. She just made the loudest groan. I don't know if that was audible.
When you said my name and then a weird groaning noise, I was a little nervous there for a moment. I want to thank Representative Crockett for that. I really is another venue for doing that. But I'm here to say what she said as to what you just said, Senator Daughtry. I think that, yeah, another way to get that through to the chief executive would be more appropriate. I did have kind of a technical question that I didn't bring up to Hillary last night. I noticed that in this part of the report, that the representatives in favor were listed by name and the dissenting members were not listed by name. And I didn't know if that was a large political stake in the sand, or whether I should burn down my house over that, or any.
No, that is a terrible oversight that I will correct immediately.
It would seem that we would go one way or the other, because I just have to see my name in print.
Well, which does the committee prefer? Would you like your names there or not there?
I think it's always helpful. Do we typically put our names in for report back? Typically just a number, isn't it?
So when we do the biennial, we typically do a number. And the reason for that is there's usually so many people going in and out and different people present for each vote that it can be extraordinarily difficult. This is short, so I can certainly put the names in. And Representative Stearns, thank you for pointing that out, because that is just completely an oversight.
If I had a choice, I would leave the names out of it.
Yeah, I'm with.
That would be my preference. However, I'll take it either way, but let's try to be consistent on it.
Okay, let's do a really,
absolutely.
Can we just do a quick straw poll? Raise your hand if you would like the names listed. Raise your hand if you'd like the names not listed. The names not listed appear to have it. And I assume the others just don't have a strong opinion. Senator Rafferty. And
so I will remove the names.
Yes, please.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just going back through some notes in response, this is just a statement, and then I have a question. The statement is around the broadband issue, and at one of the most recent meeting with the Governor's Economic Recovery Group, they threw out a number that's kind of alarming, but it was relative to fixing our broadband needs statewide. We're looking at about a $600 million price tag. So that's kind of frightening. But as a follow-up, and I don't know if it was, actually think it was with my other committee assignment, we received a report from the MEA and Department of Ed, and along the way in there, they said at one point last year, they did a study relative to the needs of the students statewide in terms of what service they needed for the virtual learning. And I was wondering if, I didn't think of it at the time, but I was wondering if that report could be made available to us so that we could get, I'm guessing that it highlighted the specific needs. I don't know if it was by municipality or by county, but it would give us an indication as to what the needs were. I know locally we've provided a lot of hotspots as an example for kids, but I mean, I don't know what if there's a bigger need that's identified statewide that we could address by prioritizing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rafferty. And Ms. Rissler, after this, can help us try to find that. And boy, 600 million, I mean, I guess we're gonna have to start planning the largest bake sale known to man. But yeah, no, it's gonna be a big lift to get this off. But you know, I think as Representative Stearns was saying, you know, the one thing that we've seen this year and that the pandemic has brought about is how, I mean, it was important before this started and now it's beyond important. Senator Woodson, followed by Representative McCray.
Yeah, I have another issue I need to take care of. Are we taking a break and coming back at a certain time?
I have the excellent news that this is their last item of work for the day before the weekend. So we'll probably,
okay. Well, I'll hang in there.
Yeah, we should be done pretty soon. Representative McCray?
Yeah, I just wanted to swing back to what Senator Rafferty said. And I guess, Madam Chair, I think you answered the question in your comments. That price tag was 600 million that he was. I'm only getting about every third word.
We could put in the report back that we need to incentivize broadband so that Representative McCray and Senator Daughtry.
Well, I think I'm watching a break dance or something. Yeah.
Box move.
Yeah.
We're getting punchy.
Yep.
Ms.
Okay.
Rissler, does that make any sense? Oh, wait, Representative McCray?
No, I just was wondering if it was What Senator Rafferty mentioned was 600 million. That's all.
Ms. Rissler, is that everything that you had for edits to go over, or?
That's everything I have, unless there is anything else that any committee members want to bring to my attention.
Senator Brennan.
No, I was just in response to Senator Rafferty's comment. The Department of Education has done 5 or 6 surveys of school districts across the state to try to identify broadband needs. And they feel at this point they're pretty close to 90 to 100% covered in terms of addressing those needs. But at the same time, as somebody pointed out, the hotspots and other things are not dependable, and the overall infrastructure is really lacking. So, and Senator, I'm assuming at this point that there seems to be agreement on everything that Hillary has drafted at this point, and that's ready to go. And then we briefly, if you want me to talk about the cover letter, I can do that as well.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. In addition to what you received from Hillary, I drafted a cover letter yesterday that would come from the senator and myself. Simply, as the senator already pointed out, anytime we have an opportunity to put something before the Appropriations Committee, we should take that opportunity. And I just thought that there were a number of other issues over the last 3 weeks that have surfaced that we should take the opportunity not to say money should be spent for this, that, or anything else, but simply to say, here are issues and here's what we learned, here's what we've been doing for the last 3 weeks. And that's where there was an inclusion about things about vaccination plan, about learning loss, about assessment, about addressing needs of special education students. And in a particular nod to Representative Dodge, I put in a comment about that we heard that students that are in the performing arts have been particularly affected by COVID-19. So it was just to put a laundry list in there so that we try to bring some awareness to the Appropriations Committee and to take that opportunity to do that through this letter.
Thank you, Representative Brennan. You should have all received the draft of that in your email, so please let us know. But thank you for taking the lead on that. I think it's an excellent recap, or I guess an executive summary of the work we've all been doing over the last couple of weeks and all the orientations. Representative Stearns.
Yes, thank you, Senator. I hate to be the bearer of bad news or to cast a dark light upon things, but I'm not in favor of that cover letter for a variety of reasons. And one was, you mentioned earlier, we've had a couple of bumps in the road regarding staying within our lane. And in my opinion, this is beyond the lane. Had I known there were going to be a writing assignment and that individual members of the committee were going to express their views of what the vision of education in the state of Maine should look like, I certainly would have taken time to at least provide input into that. I don't think there was any opportunity to do that by members. I think there is every opportunity for individual members or caucuses to use Facebook, individual letters to committees, that still exists. But as far as our committee, I would like to see us remain within the parameters of having our analyst do the work that she is expected to do, that type thing. If our committee assigns the chairs to construct a letter, so be it. But I wanted to weigh in on that. Again, not a piece about the content. Had I written that, it would have had other items of priority in it, perhaps. So I just wanted to express that view, and I'm hoping that all members of the committee will take those words for what they are. Just we have to speak up for how we feel on procedural things. Thanks.
Absolutely. And I'll just add in real quick and then let Representative Brennan respond. Completely understand. I think, not to speak for Mike, I think, typically the chairs will go and present the report. And I think the idea was to, instead of just us, talking to be able to give the committee a chance to weigh in on what they'd want to have sort of launched into our report. But if there is discomfort on it, absolutely agree. I want to make sure that what we're bringing back to appropriations speaks for all of us and is an accurate example of what the work we've been doing, and totally understand that. Representative Brennan? I don't know if you wanted to respond to that before we go to Representative Dodge.
Sure. And again, I think you touched upon this. Typically, in the past, when we've had reports back to the Appropriations Committee, they have been done in person and verbally. And the chairs have some discretion in terms of saying, here's what the committee's been doing and here's what the focus has been and relative to the budget. And we're not going to have that opportunity this time because we've been told the report back is basically in writing and would be due later this afternoon. So again, I thought it was important that the Appropriations Committee, and again, it's not unusual, this has been done in the past, to be able to talk a little bit more about the scope of the work that we've been doing for the last 3 weeks to alert the Appropriations Committee that there are other issues that are that have surfaced that are not narrowly focused on within the supplemental budget. And again, the supplemental budget, as you know, Representative Stearns, is something that only is passed or looked at in terms of trying to balance the budget between the end of the year. But at the same time, I think you would agree over the last 3 weeks, we've had a number of issues that have come forward to us that have been COVID-19 related, that it's very important for our colleagues and on the Appropriations Committee and with the legislature to be aware of. So and the reason why I drafted it and made sure we sent it to the committee was clearly because of the discussion we had on Wednesday. And I wanted to make sure that if anybody else wanted to weigh in and say we should add this to it or take this out of it, that opportunity would be there.
Thank you, Representative.
But also, I mean, if, people on the committee are uncomfortable with doing that, I'm more than happy. The senator and myself could send the letter separately from the report back to the Appropriations Committee, specifically related to the supplemental budget.
Representative Dodge?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Chair. You partially answered my question about the precedent setting that has gone on in years past about the reporting mechanism. But I wonder if we could turn this inside out, and I might ask this question. If we are not communicating to the Appropriations Committee that we have additional concerns that have appeared and been presented to us in the last 3 weeks, are we then not perhaps setting our committee and its members up for a response of why didn't you bring these additional things to our attention when you had the chance? Could we play devil's advocate so that we are doing all that we can to inform and get help? Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Dodge. Any other points on this? Because I do want to make sure we're not doing anything that steps on anyone's toes. And I think, it's just trying to adapt to the digital landscape and find the way to best navigate it and do what really shows an accurate representation of everyone's work on this and that no one's left behind. Representative Crockett and then Representative Stearns.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I just, I don't know if everybody has received this letter yet. I can't seem to find it in my email stream, so.
Should have come from Ms. Rissler, and I think it was last night, right?
Yeah, so in the same email that I sent yesterday evening with the report back documents, Representative Brennan's email was forwarded below that, so you'll have to scroll down.
Representative Stearns?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Representative Crockett's last comment is a pretty good example of exactly what I'm talking about. That had we left the committee the other day saying that, oh, by the way, the chairs will be drafting a cover letter that's going to cover various other topics, I might have piped up and said, gee, love to see that before we get on live Hollywood Square TV to discuss, so that we might have a little bit of input on that. And we could have, as we did with the analyst letter, we were able to tweak that, find a typo, that type thing, and everyone's happy. I don't think the process has been followed. Again, one of our own members, we have members that are missing right now.
Yeah.
They might have not gotten an email. I know that legislation is a slow process, and it was designed to do that. So again, I feel that if it's an exercise for the committee to say, hey, by the way, people out there who are making decisions with money, here are things that were not in the supplemental that they are looming, and we want you to be aware of these as you consider funding. I'm fine with that.
Yeah. So and that's a good reminder, Representative Stearns, that we are down some members right now. I'm wondering maybe perhaps, if everyone feels that the letter that we had from Ms. Rissler that we just went over does, a good, accurate representation of everything we're facing in the supplemental, and then maybe we can set some time aside to discuss, other aspects, because we will have another stab at this at the biennium to keep raising these points. We've already talked so far about wanting to have a stronger message on broadband. Many of the points that Representative Brennan mentioned in his letter, and I'm sure we all have different policy points that we'd like to bring to the forefront. So maybe that's just an exercise that we can sort of use and try to save for the biennium report back, as well as discuss potentially, a letter to the chief executive on the other items that were brought up that we knew were within her lane as well. So I'd love to get some feedback from folks. I think Representative Brennan, I don't know if I just saw your hand go up, but let me know if that sort of sums up a little bit better everyone's comfort level.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments, Senator. And the only point that I would make again is that this is an extraordinarily unique time, and that biennium budget, if it's all signed and done, would go into effect July 1st. And so the question is, are there issues that we as the legislature, the Education Committee, in the middle of this pandemic, need to address in order to make sure that schools continue to be able to do the work they're doing between now and June? So the budget is going to speak to the future. The only opportunity to speak to the present right now is through the supplemental budget. So, but as I said before, if Representative Stearns is uncomfortable with the letter, we'll just send what the committee has agreed upon at this point, and you and I can decide to send a letter separately to the Appropriations Committee outlining some additional concerns that we have.
Representative Stearns?
That sounds fine. And even in your cover letter to allude to that fact, to say that this report is within the scope of the report back for the supplemental. However, we're working on another list, or don't feel that perhaps everyone on our committee feels this is going to cover all the needs that are out there. There are many other needs, and we will be bringing those to your attention in a timely manner. I'm fine with that.
I like that idea actually a lot.
Yeah.
I like that idea of saying, just even if it's just a couple of lines of, this is so much bigger than what's within this parameters.
And that gives them a good heads up, and procedurally, it lessens my heartburn up here in Guilford.
We definitely don't want to have you have heartburn. Senator Rafferty, and I'm going to excuse myself real quick to grab some water.
Excuse me. Thank you again, Madam Chair. But that, by doing it that way, that gives the rest of us an opportunity to sign on should we choose to do so. So I'd appreciate that opportunity. Thank you.
Fastest water grab ever. Sorry, I had to completely slide into the kitchen and come back. Excellent point, Senator Rafferty. I think that seems to be, from the faces I'm seeing around the Hollywood Square is probably a better comfort level. Does anyone have anything else to add, or? Oh, nope, I am seeing Zoom lunch fatigue. So to sum up, sorry, the joy of talking all day, my throat went completely dry there. We're going to put in the line that Representative Stearns suggested into the letter that Ms. Rissler and all of us have been going over today. And then we will not be sending the cover letter. And then I think Representative Brennan really started a great exercise here for all of us to be continuing to think of, Senator Woodson brought up bringing back the broadband to our caucus. Like, what are the top lines that we are hearing universally from everyone, whether, they're in Guilford or Portland or Belfast. And so maybe, we have a crazy week next week with nominations, but definitely I think that would be the homework assignment for the weekend, is to really reflect on that and what we've heard and what we feel isn't really being discussed in length within, the different aspects of the budgeting process, and just in general, anything we want to be able to use the power of this committee to really shine a light on, really start sort of thinking about those different aspects. And then maybe next week we can set aside some time to sort of discuss these as a greater whole, especially the leave issue with, now that Connecticut has taken executive action, maybe that's something we can concretely discuss, of sending a letter to the chief executive, of just be like, hey, this has been flagged. But is that an accurate representation, I think, of what we've discussed and moving forward? I am seeing thumbs up. So Ms. Rissler, unless you have any clarifying questions for us.
Nope, I think I'm good. I will add the sentence regarding, things to come. Remove the names from the memo, add the additional information on the minority report and the rainy day fund, and then tweak the broadband to not reference the initiative directly, but to simply mention that broadband is important and critical to success of the schools.
Yes, please. And our committees, but don't include that last part. Representative McCray, did I see a hand go up?
Yeah, I'm afraid you did. Would it be possible, would there be any objection by anybody if the reference to broadband and its mapping or something to that effect? Because increasing broadband is a different issue than mapping broadband. So if it doesn't ruffle any feathers, I'd love to have just the word mapping thrown in there. It's like, oh, that's right.
Mapping our needs for something like that.
Yeah, something that just brings that one word, insert it wherever it works, Hillary. Because I really see the two issues related, but they are very different issues. Needing broadband and knowing where we need it most are kind of two different things.
Yeah, I'm seeing nodding heads, so Representative Dodd.
It's about assessment before you proceed.
Senator Woodson.
Yeah, keep in mind also and be aware that there are other committees addressing broadband and mapping of broadband and trying to figure out different ways of utilizing money that's available to do this. So, I mean, it's being discussed in a lot of different areas, but you need to be aware of that.
Absolutely. Well, I think, Ms. Rissler, is that clear?
That works for me, as long as that works for everybody on the committee.
Okay, everyone gives a thumbs up if we're all in the same place.
Great.
Oh, I'm seeing, is that a thumbs up or a hand from Representative Brennan?
Uh,
I think it's a thumbs up. Okay, I think we're
all right. I'm good. Thank you. I will get that out to AFA by the deadline this evening.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank everyone for your patience. I know it's been a long morning. And thank you for a lot of incredible work this week. We do have a long week ahead of us. Make sure you get a chance to read the nomination packets, since we won't be getting those printed out on our desk. It's a really good opportunity to get to know the candidates that'll be coming in front of us, or nominees, I should say. Does anyone have any questions on that or anything else you want to bring up before we break for the weekend?
Well, Senator, it was Representative Stearns asked earlier today whether or not we could forego all the reading and preambles for the various nominations. And Sam did inquire and got back and said, yes, we do have the flexibility to kind of apply whatever preamble we want and don't necessarily have to stick to the script that's been presented to us.
Thank you, parliamentary gods.
So that should save us.
Sense an opportunity for
save us a little bit. Save us a little bit of time.
Absolutely. I was thinking, especially when my throat went dry, I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to like get like a Camelback or something to read those scripts with the auctioneer voice. So that is excellent news for all of us. Well, with that being said, Sam?
I know not everybody's here, but just for the members that are present, again, the technologically things are going to look just a little different on Monday. Please don't panic. I'm here primarily to support the Zoom space and how this all works. So, call my direct line or email me if you're having issues, but that registration link will be going out this afternoon. It will look a little different than what we've done so far. But if you have any questions or any confusion, please I work best when there's communication. So communicate, and that's the only way that I can help you. And then we'll have a good week next week.
Wonderful. Representative Stearns?
Another way of explaining what Sam's talking about, I've had that happen, the webinar piece. When you get that email, you can immediately click on that link. And then later on, you'll get a response from Zoom with the normal procedure for getting in. So you don't have to wait until just prior to the meeting to click on that invitation. You can respond as soon as you get it. It took me 44 days to figure that out.
I think that's a great point, Representative. And I would actually encourage that because I have it set up so that you're going to get 2 reminder emails before the hearing starts. So then that way now you're going to get a total of 3 emails and it should not get lost, fingers crossed, in your inbox. So thank you, Representative. I think that's a really good point.
Thanks, Sam. I was looking forward to getting more emails. I like that.
Representative Dodge.
So the email that we should flag in order to have a live link and quick access on Monday morning at 6 minutes of 10 will be identifiable how, please?
That's a great question, Representative Dodge. So you're going to get an email on Sunday because that's the day before Monday. So you have a day before reminder email, and you're also going to get 1 hour before we start. So I think we're starting at 10 a.m. on Monday. So around 9 a.m. there'll be the most fresh email possible, and it will come from Zoom, and it will say reminder in the subject line. It'll say reminder, and it'll say like February 8th, 10 a.m. You'll have those details in there.
And that will be the live link that I should flag so I can get there fast.
Exactly. When you click on that link, it'll take you right into the webinar. Because you all are committee members, it's going to look very similar for you. You will all be panelists in the webinar. So it'll be this, Brady Bunch view with all the grids, and you'll see each other's faces. The only thing that'll change really is for the people that are testifying, and we get to promote them, and then they get to speak, and then we get to demote them and they get to just watch again from away. So it should look very similar for all of you, though.
And I'd like to be promoted, please. Thank you.
Senator Rafferty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sam, just to clarify, in my situation, I'm going to start the labor and housing and then enter this shortly afterwards. Am I okay to still click on that early, like Sunday night?
Yes, Senator, you'll be okay. I'll be watching for you and make sure you're in the meeting, in the webinar.
Just to answer any questions, I will share my screen really quickly to show you what an email looks like that I received from the IDEA committee to testify for a bill, just to make sure you know what it looks like. If it'll let me do this. Okay, let me know. Can everyone see my terrifying inbox? So this is, Sam, this is correct of what people will be receiving, right?
Yeah, that right there, that looks like a reminder email.
Okay.
But it came directly from Jody. So maybe Jody copy and pasted the reminder email. But that's very similar to what the reminder email will look like. It has the date there, the time, it has the LD numbers. It clearly says public hearings. So it'll look very similar to this, if not identical to it.
Absolutely. And so, the link that Representative Stearns was discussing, this is where you'll go and register in advance. And as Sam said, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any confusion. And yeah, no, I thought that'd be helpful for everyone to just sort of see a visual reminder. I'm getting a thumbs up from Jan. Let me just stop the share. Got that. I also, Representative Crockett.
Yeah, on that, Sam, I get all my legislative emails on my iPad. Doesn't go on my laptop, but I'm on my laptop right now. Do I need to forward that email to my laptop email?
Yes, yes, Representative, if you want to access the webinar on your laptop, then I'm guessing you probably have your personal email on your laptop, but not your legislative one.
Yes, I have
Okay.
my business email on this particular one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yep. So just whichever device that you're going to be running the webinar on, you need to make sure you get that email there. So yeah, you can simply forward it. That wouldn't be a problem.
Thank you.
Representative McCray.
Yes, I don't know if I'm going to break up coming to you guys, but so for those of us that are on two committees and may have several bills going God knows where, are we going to get an invite from the committee that bills were assigned to, that we either sponsored or co-sponsored? We register and then we'll be invited?
Yes.
Yes, even this morning, I already had to send out the emails to all the sponsors and co-sponsors for the bills that we'll be hearing on Monday for this particular committee. So that should be happening across the committees.
And really getting into the weeds, will legislators have an opportunity to testify first and get back to the education committee or whatever?
I think that's up to each committee, but I will say, I assume we'll keep doing what we've always done, which is do legislators first to allow them to do just that, unless anyone has any particular reasons otherwise.
Great.
Any other questions on the technology?
Thank you.
Of course. Representative Brennan, did you raise your hand? Yes, no?
Yeah, just very quick. I thought I had already asked this and I knew this, but I'm presenting a bill to the Education Committee on Monday. I don't have to go out of the committee in order to then come back in to present the bill, right?
That's a great question, Representative. No, you'll just be a panelist the entire time. So, and we did receive your testimony.
I just got it. I saw it in my when I was popping up the webinar screen. Sam, I do just want to really thank you for, coming on board under short notice and really doing a great job of keeping us on track. And I've been particularly, especially when I'm trying to navigate going to different committees, I've been very appreciative of you continuing to send out the link ahead of time. It's been a real lifesaver. So I think from all of us on the committee, we really want to thank you for all of your work and, for everything, keeping the digital life going. And also, as always, Ms. Rissler, thank you for taking our loose thoughts and making them coherent and concise, and also keeping us on track. So with that, Representative Brennan.
This morning we had this discussion, and just to reiterate it again, that confirmation hearings, unlike other actions by the legislature, you have to be present to vote in confirmation hearings. So if there's somebody during the confirmation process that you want to make sure that you have the opportunity to vote for, you need to make sure that you're present when that vote is taken.
Good reminder. And also, once again, if you have any questions about the process or anything for next week on the agenda, please feel free to reach out to the chairs or to Sam or to Hillary, except for on the nominees, because that's not handled by OPLA. But other than that, I think everyone's got the it's lunchtime and I'm so tired of Zoom. I never want to see a computer again face. So have a wonderful weekend, everyone. It really is a pleasure to get to spend my week with all of you. And I hope you get plenty of time away from a computer screen. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.